one, orange is because it's the color, number one, that hunters wear so that they can, to alert other hunters. And second is because it's bold, it demands attention, and it demands action. So I will let the slides kind of take it from there, and then I will be available for any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go back? Okay. Orange is a color that Heidi Pendleton's friends wore in her honor when she was shot and killed at the age of 15 on the south side of Chicago. And so her friends asked us to stand up, speak out, and to wear orange to raise awareness about gun violence. We wear orange to honor more than 90 lives that are cut short and hundreds more are injured by gun violence every day, and to demand action. And like you'll see in the video, we are not statistics. We are not numbers. Survivors are just that. They're survivors. The kids at Parkland and Columbine and Sandy Hook and now Santa Fe, they're not numbers. They're kids. Their families are real. And with thousands of Americans, we are going to turn America orange. But it doesn't end there, and I will speak to that afterwards. Okay. And now, if you'll indulge me, there's a short, very brief video.
Hi, my name is Haidia. It's your job as students to say yes to a great future.
To know Haidia, boy.
She wasn't someone who would be in a crowd and would be lost.
Haidia was an athlete.
She was very family-oriented.
Haidia was a comedian. Everybody was her best friend.
I don't know how to explain it, but she was just herself. She was mine.
Haidia was 15 when she was shot and killed.
She was our heart. But for some, she was a headline. That's because in America, more than 90 people die and hundreds more are injured to gun violence every day. We wear orange for Haidia.
For what her life means to us.
I wear orange as a symbol of what's happened to me and my family.
I wear orange because I am not a statistic.
I wear orange like a hunter in the woods.
To protect my life. I wear orange
because orange demands to be seen, and I demand to see change.
So tell me.
Can you see me now?
So where you all come in is my group is called Moms Demand Action Treasure Coast North, and it's St. Louis County and Indian River. So I'm hoping that by me coming here today that I can start gathering people together as a group and make us just as much of a force to be reckoned with as other groups in the state. And what I'm asking for Wear Orange this year is my event is I want to turn the Treasure Coast North as orange as is possibly possible. It doesn't cost anything. there's no entry fee, there's no prizes at the end. But for people to not only wear orange, but create their teams, get creative, use your imagination. Let's celebrate life and celebrate ideas. 15 years around the sun, and demand action. And I'm here for any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Simmons. Do you have a like a location for June 2nd where people are going to gather, or like at a park or anything? Or
Actually, no. What I'm just hoping is that each business, if you want to make it a friendly little competition, or between departments, if, the police departments want to put an orange ribbon on their car, I'm leaving it up to each business, each company, schools, whomever wants to participate on their own, and just to see how much turnout I can get.
okay. Well, Ms. Simmons, this is being televised, obviously, and the tape will also be available on the county's website. So hopefully people will come back and circle back and watch the video and watch your presentation, and we can help spread awareness for you that way.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Fleischer.
offer any contact information? Is there any type of website or telephone number that people can call to be more involved?
Okay, thank you for reminding me. If people want to know more about it, they can text 64433 and reply orange. And they put in their zip code, and there will be 2 events that show up, one for Martin County, and mine is on top for Treasure Coast North. And you just click on that, and it explains a little bit more about that weekend. And you can also go to monstermandaction.org.
Very good. Thank you. Any commissioners, any other comments? Okay. Ms. Simmons, thank you very much, and good luck with your event.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming today. Next is we added a presentation from the Department of Health on the recently issued rabies alert, and we have Miranda Hawker here. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. Oh, thank you for the pointer. Sorry, I have to get used to the new system. We did want to talk about the rabies alert that was recently issued on May 15th. I'm Miranda Hawker. I'm the health officer for Indian River. With me today is also Cheryl Dunn, who is our environmental manager and Indian River County environmental control officer, as well as Barb Pergolski, who's an over epidemiology for us and also a licensed veterinarian. I do want to start by saying that Tad Stone has been absolutely great with his assistance in this matter, and animal control is absolutely critical in our response effort. Oh, thank you. Our rabies alert was issued May 15th. It's in effect for 60 days. It's bordered by south of State Road 60, also known as 20th Street, north of Oslo Road, known as 9th Street Southwest, east of 66th Avenue, and west of Highway 1. And it was established in response to a stray cat testing positive for rabies on May 15th. This cat was a tricolor brown domestic short-haired cat and attacked someone working in their yard. And there was an open feeding site across the street. I do want to give you the parameters from which we do call a rabies alert. It's called when a domestic animal develops rabies, such as a cat, a clustering of wildlife rabies, or several confirmed rabid animals in a short period of time, which would exceed the 5-year average. things that we do during an alert we're collaborating with local animal control to increase surveillance and identification and capture of stray cats, dogs, and other wildlife, working with the Humane Society. We also have alerted all of our Everbridge partners in terms of our local medical providers, daycares, child cares, veterinarians, all of our providers about our rabies alert. The rabies alert functions to increase awareness about this situation and that it's occurred. I do want to talk about what rabies is. It's a deadly viral disease that can be prevented but not cured. I do want to emphasize this first bullet, that rabies is fatal. The virus is shed through saliva and passed to another animal or person, usually through a bite. It can also occur as saliva or nervous tissue enters open wounds, the mouth, or eyes. Animals with rabies have strange behavior. They can appear unusually calm, or they can be unusually aggressive and attack for no reason. They may not be able to eat, drink, or swallow. They may drool because they can't swallow. They may stagger or become paralyzed, and eventually the animal will die. The only treatment is rabies-specific immune globulin and rabies immunization, and the treatment must be started soon after exposure. So what do I do if an animal bites me? You should immediately wash that wound with soap and running water for 5 to 10 minutes. It's important that you get a complete description of the animal and where it is so that animal control can pick it up for confinement or rabies testing. You need to go to your family doctor or to the emergency room. You also need to call animal control immediately with the description and the location of the animal. If you kill the animal, be careful not to damage the head and avoid further contact even when it is dead. The head is what we send off for the testing for rabies. On the bottom of the screen are the numbers for Indian River County Animal Control, as well as the City of Vero Beach Police Department for the city's animal control. So what do we want people to do to protect themselves, their family, and pets? Vaccinate all of your dogs, cats, ferrets, and even horses against rabies, and follow your vet's instructions for revaccination. Avoid contact with wild or stray animals, including free-roaming cats. And we use the term free roaming not only to talk about those stray or feral animals, but also animals that are outside and unattended if people let their cats roam free. Never feed wild or stray animals. Do not attract them with outdoor food sources. Feed pets indoors. Do not allow pets to run free. Follow leash laws. But if your animal is attacked by a wild, stray, or unvaccinated animal, do not examine your pet for injuries without wearing gloves. Wash your pet with soap and water to remove saliva for the attacking animal. And don't let your animal come in contact with other pets or people until you've spoken with animal control or the health department. So this picture on the screen is from an open feeding site within our county. When we are concerned about open feeding, you look at the 20-year average in Florida. The number one rabid animal in Florida is the raccoon. It's also the primary reservoir in the eastern United States. When you have open feeding sites for cats, raccoons are also looking for food, so you get the commingling of the animals, and then the animals fight for the food, and that's when you have a tremendous risk for rabies. Rabid cats are more likely to be aggressive, and they're also difficult to catch. We had there are a lot of documented human exposures from confirmed rabid cats in the eastern U.S. In 2010, there was a rabies victim in California that was 8 years old that was likely exposed from free-roaming cats in a colony near her house and had a history of bites. So when we look at open feeding, we talk about a sanitary nuisance that is injurious to the public health because of the situation where you have wildlife that are commingling and competing for food. There are also other diseases that are of concern when you talk about an open feeding situation and commingling, but what I am talking about today is rabies. We do want people to be aware of what they need to do now. If you have been bitten or scratched by a cat meeting this description, the tricolor short-haired brown cat, in the alert area between May 1st and May 15th when we issued the alert, immediately call the health department at 772-794-7440. If your animals haven't been vaccinated or are not current on vaccinations, get them vaccinated for rabies. I can tell you that our local veterinarians have been very helpful and are very responsive in this effort. The Humane Society is working on scheduling a low-cost rabies vaccination clinic, and we'll be announcing those soon. I do also want to tell you that open feeding is a concern for us in terms of public health. We've had 15 complaints of open feeding year-to-date so far in 2018. So this is an issue that we do have in our county, and we'd really like people to pay attention to. And in terms of the legal authorities that we operate under when we're talking about sanitary nuisances and we're talking about rabies control, it's Florida Chapter 381, 386, and then 64D3, Florida Administrative Code. The Florida Rabies Advisory Committee is the preeminent authority for rabies in our state, and the rabies prevention and control in Florida, the compendium, is what we refer to when we look at actions like our rabies alert or anything when we're looking at in terms of response and control. And at this point, we'd like to take any concerns you might have. I also do have a flyer in English and Spanish on rabies that's outside the chambers here if you'd like a copy of it.
Miranda, I was driving through the area last week and saw some folks out working in their yard, so I stopped to ask them, and they had been contacted by your office. I think Charles Vogt had called them. Okay. So they were well aware of the alert, and so I think the information is getting out, particularly the folks in kind of near ground zero there. So I think y'all did a good job of getting the word out to those folks. So, and I think you should have, but how long is the alert issued for?
60 days.
60 days, okay.
Yes.
And then if there's no other cats that are trapped or tested, then does it go away, or do you extend it?
I have to formally rescind it.
Okay.
Because it's official action. So at the end of 60 days, if we don't have a reason to continue that, then I would rescind it.
Okay. And it is a pretty broad area, it seems like, from US 1 to 66 and Oslo to State Road 60. So it does encompass a lot of neighborhoods in that alert. So
when we look at an alert, we coordinate with the State Department of Health, and we also look at the roaming nature of a cat, which is up to 2 miles.
Okay.
So, and we look at major roadways.
Okay. And was the cat captured? The one in
Yes.
question? Okay.
The cat was captured.
Okay. And has it been tested and
And
verified?
killed and tested.
Okay. Very good. Commissioners, any other? Commissioner Fleischer.
Yes, and thank you, Miranda, and thank your whole staff for what they're doing to ensure the public safety. You mentioned scratch and bite and open feeding. Can I join them together? I realize that species will fight for food, and they will become aggressive, and they may scratch and bite each other, and that's how it would be transferred. My question is, your concern with open feeding, does it have to be body fluid from host to host, or could it be transferred through the food, through sharing the same food, maybe not digesting food? There are some animals who digest other things and may forage for the protein from fecal matter.
So it's transmitted by the saliva, but I'm going to let Cheryl speak to the question that you had.
It's very rare that it's transmitted through food or water, through drinking. It's typically through the bite.
So it's bite and scratch that
Right.
we're most concerned with.
Right, because the virus doesn't live outside the body. I mean, there's a rare chance that it could be in the food or water, but it's predominantly transmitted through the bites of the animals competing for the food and scratching. So in other words, the raccoons tangling with the cats and then cats tangling with other cats and in competition for the food.
So citizens and specifically, or especially children who are compelled to pet animals that they see or think they're all their friends should stay away from those animals, even if they have a unique ear or
Right.
they believe they might have been vaccinated. They should not be.
Right, because you don't know. If it's an unknown animal, you don't know if it's vaccinated. And that's one of the things we actually put in our alerts that we didn't put up there, was that parents need to teach their children not to approach unknown animals and teach and help guide their children through that messaging. And that's some of the messaging and the educational material that we've provided. We're going door to door and actually handing out leaflets that includes that information in there for adults.
So your message is stay away and report stray animals.
Right. And please, if you had any contact with this animal or were bit by an animal in that area, to report it to animal control and let us investigate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, also, we were having a meeting on some health issues with the two of you and a few others a couple weeks ago, and there is a large cost between the state and the county when someone becomes infected, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but if you could kind of highlight those again if you remember them. But you have the cost of the door-to-door, you have the cost of the treatment, you have the cost of quarantining, so whatever you could share on that would be appreciated.
Well, and I don't have the exact figures on the response, but I can tell you just in terms of the treatment and just the cost of the vaccine and the immune globulin is about $5,000
Per person.
for post-exposure prophylaxis per person. And then all of those other costs are added on top of that.
Right. Are you guys having to do this sort of with staff overtime, or are you diverting them from other things and putting them on the door-to-door routine, so it has to have?
It would be both in terms of animal control and for the health department.
Okay,
And redirecting staff.
great. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Miranda and Cheryl, thank you very much, and hopefully you can come back to us in 60 days and let us know that it's been rescinded and everything's good.
And please know, I do sincerely appreciate the support of the commission, and Tad really has been excellent in terms of coordinating with us as well as the Humane Society.
Great, good.
Thanks.
Thank you both very much. That moves us to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 17, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Informational items, Commissioners, any discussion on the two items listed there? We do have our Indian County venue event calendar, which is pretty full. I think staff's doing a great job keeping lots of things going on here in the county, so good work there. Consent agenda items. Commissioners, does anyone wish to pull an item from consent for additional discussion?
8E, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I would like to pull 8F. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to have a consent agenda item pulled for additional discussion? Seeing none, Commissioners?
Approval as amended.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. We'll go to Commissioner Zork with item E, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm in support of the rejecting of the bids that were listed under 8E, and just had a question for Public Works that, we've got quite a wide swing of pricing from $112,000 to $234,000, and I didn't know if there was any portion of the job that may be driving up the cost, or is there a part that we might consider doing in-house, the piping portion, and just have them doing the flat work portion, or what are your ideas to revisit that?
And Commissioner Zork, I didn't hear you, I don't think, but just for the public, this is a rejection of bids for Fire Station 8 concrete replacement. So, thank you, Rich.
Rich Berger, Public Works Director. I looked at the bid proposals this morning. The numbers are in line with what we're seeing in the development community. As far as removal and replacement, there was about 18,000 square feet of concrete. It's running about anywhere from $45 to $57 a square yard, or excuse me, square foot. And with the removal of that concrete, those numbers, the lower numbers, 150, 160, it's pretty close to what I calculated this morning. The pipe, they didn't really break out the cost.
Okay.
The pipe is wasn't that expensive. It's just the concrete. Concrete is expensive right now.
And then also, was there any restabilization of that area under that maybe partially attributed to the crumbling of the concrete that's there?
The bid did not say anything, and I have not analyzed what's out there
Okay.
to tell you whether or not it was not included in the bid
Okay.
with the documents that I read this morning.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move 8E for approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Flesher. Is there any public discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Item F, and I just pulled this is the approval of the contract with the Special Olympics of the Florida Aquatic Championships Agreement to be held at the North County Aquatic Center. And I think this just really shows a lot about our community. This will be the 12th year in a row that we've hosted the Special Aquatic Olympics. And it's greatly due to the large number of volunteers that we get that come out and make this a successful event, and that shows Special Olympics that we are a community that can get engaged, get involved, and make this event a success. So they want to keep coming back as our community does such a great job. And of course, our recreation department, they're the ones out there really doing the hard work, getting things organized and set up. So I just want to give a public shout out to all of our recreation staff folks, and to encourage, I know some of us in the past have volunteered. Commissioners, if you haven't had a chance, it's a very moving experience, I would say, to participate with these athletes. They're giving their all, and they are true Olympic champions. But also for the general public, we can always use more volunteers, so please contact our rec department for opportunities for the upcoming swim meet. And with that, I'll be glad to second a motion to...
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by myself. Is there any public comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. There are no constitutional officer items, so we move to public items. We have the first public hearing. It's a request for authorization to submit applications for federal transit administration grants for capital and operating assistance for fiscal year 2018. Mr. Brian Freeman. Good morning, Brian. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Brian Freeman with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Indian River County's public transportation system consists of the GO Line fixed route system, which has 15 routes that operate on Monday through Saturday, and also the Community Coach door-to-door system. Last year, the GO Line provided just over 1.2 million trips, and the Community Coach system provided around 49,000 trips last year. Today, we are requesting the board's authorization to submit 2 grant applications with the Federal Transit Administration. The first grant is what's called the Section 5307 grant, and it's actually the single largest funding source for the public transportation system, and it has both an operating and a capital component. On the operating side, it covers about half of the operating costs for the system, and this grant is really a great value for the county because we're able to take one county dollar and match it with a state dollar, and then use those $2 to match 2 federal dollars. So that means that for every county dollar that's put forward towards the operating costs, we're able to pull down $3 from both the state and the feds. And then looking at both grant applications together, Section 5307 and 5339, they cover most of the capital costs for the system, and some of the items that we have this year for capital include replacement buses, regular maintenance, and also computers and software and security equipment. And let's see. Oh, and on the Section 5339 grant, this year we are actually receiving 3 years worth of funding because of a change in the procedure with the state, where we used to receive the money through the state, but now we're able to apply for it directly with the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. And today this public hearing is a federal requirement for those grant applications, and after the public hearing, staff is requesting that the board adopt the resolution authorizing staff to submit both grant applications to the Federal Transit Administration. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the item before us? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Commissioners, your pleasure. We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adams, to approve staff request. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. That motion passes 4-0. The second public hearing we have is a code enforcement fine ordinance. This is legislative in nature, and this will be led by Mr. Dylan Reingold. Good morning, Dylan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. On February 6, 2018, the board voted to authorize staff to draft an ordinance concerning elevated fines for tampering with the county's water utility connections. Per statute, the fines can be increased by ordinance approved by a majority +1 to $1,000 per day per violation for a first violation, $5,000 per day for a repeat violation. After presenting a draft ordinance to the board on May 1st, 2018, the Board of County Commissioners had authorized staff to schedule this public hearing today on the draft ordinance. I will note that the draft ordinance not only addresses the tampering with utility connections issue, but also the commercial event at residence issue, which the board has addressed previously. Simply recommend that the Board of County Commissioners open the public hearing, take any public comment, close the public hearing, and vote to approve the ordinance as presented. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Yes, I have one.
Commissioner Zork.
Yes, Dylan, under paragraph 2, the last sentence, $1,000 per violation for the first violation, $5,000 per day violation for a repeat violation. Is it a repeat violation on the same address, or is it to the same contractor or the same vendor? Do we need to, seems like if you have, my understanding is that many of the violations occur with some of the masonry contractors working for XYZ company. And so if they get caught on that one, is the repeat if they get caught down the street or caught again at the same location?
Honestly, I'll defer to staff in terms of the way that they've interpreted that. That is pretty much straight out of the statutory language. Okay. I mean, my idea is if staff determines something to be a repeat offense, whether it's the same property or different property, then you would have that ability to then increase the fines to the $5,000 number.
Good morning, Roland.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Roland DuBois, County Chief of Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement. It is an interpretation through 162 that it doesn't have to be at the same location. If it's the same contractor, same violation, it can be a repeat regardless of location.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Good.
Yes.
Any other commissioners? Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment on the matter before us? Seeing none, commissioners, your pleasure.
Move approval of the ordinance. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slaughter, second by Commissioner Flesher, to approve the fine ordinance. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you very much. This is an important issue for us.
Moving to public discussion items, we have a request to speak from Herb Whittall regarding the Spoonbill Marsh and the Lagoon. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Herb Whittall, 19 Park Avenue, Vero Beach, Vero Isles. Back on Thursday, May 10th, I went with some of the members of the IRA and made a visit to Spoonbill Marsh. I'd heard bad things about it, but I tell you, when we got there, Pfeffer had put in a crab trap the night before with a chicken neck in it. When he pulled it out, they had 10 beautiful blue crabs and one about a 5-pound grouper in there. How the grouper got there, we don't know. But
Was left of the grouper.
I tell you, I live on a canal. If I put a crab trap off my dock, I may get one crummy looking crab. Those crabs are beautiful. I'd love to have the lagoon with that kind of life in it. And unfortunately, Spoonbill Marsh is just cleaning up or working with discharge from your water treatment plant and not from anything else. Unfortunately, we have a lot of things going in the lagoon that are hurting it. The University of Washington some years back did a test. They took water off a road and they took half of it and put it into a container. The other half they filtered through a garden type thing and put it in a container. Then they put some fish in that water. Within 1 hour, all the fish had died in the water directly off the road. The next day, the fish were still doing well on the filtered one. We're putting all kinds of water from the road directly into the canal, and that's all toxic. I have a 50-inch pipe that comes into my canal that drains Miracle Mile. There's a baffle box that the state put in, but when it rains like it has a couple of days ago hard, that 50-inch pipe is full. And it actually, I can see that water moving in my canal 400 feet from the pipe. That's how fast it's coming out. Obviously, the baffle box is doing nothing. And the baffle box is not going to take out the toxins that are killing the fish. It'll take out sand and debris. So anyway, looking at what does this do for money? When I pay your tax, it is 11% of my total real estate tax. If you raise your taxes to me by 20% and put it into cleaning up the water that goes into the lagoon, it would only raise my real estate tax 2%. But let's look at another thing. If my canal put out crabs like your Spoonbill Marsh, my house value would probably go up 25%. That's a lot of money. If the lagoon dies, my house value probably goes down 50%. That's also a lot of money. So your taxes are really small, and even though the Taxpayers Association bitches and moans, and I got no objection to efficient government, but I'd like to see more money spent on working to keep the canals that drain into the lagoon, keep that water clean. And obviously, the lower salinity of Spoonbill Marsh didn't hurt the crabs or the grouper. Now, Mr. Zork, you're talking about putting water from the ocean into Bethel Creek. Where does that stand?
Well, a few months ago, I had brought the idea, could the county, with the other commissioners, allow that concept of a project to be elevated? And at that time, they said, you know, you don't have enough information yet to bring it forward. So since that time, I've continued meeting with some community groups. I think there might have been one that you were at that a resident in the Bethel Creek area hosted. There's some new support groups that have come out, Friends of Bethel Creek, All About Bethel Creek, that are, you know, most things happen when the more than one resident kind of joins together and helps bring a project or an idea forward. Still working with some of the technical consultants who have been nice enough to continue lending me their ear on how do we accomplish this. And hopefully sometime during the summer, we'll bring back another attempt to this commission to see if we can elevate this from an idea that I've been working on to something that we can allocate some more staff time to.
Well, I heard one item was that maybe the increased salinity in Bethel Creek would be a problem. Now, obviously, the decreased salinity didn't hurt the crabs or the grouper in Spoonbill Marsh. So I doubt if the increased salinity of putting seawater into Bethel Creek would hurt anything either. In fact, it would probably help them because it would clean things up. Now, tonight at 6 o'clock in the North County Library, Dr. Leslie Sue is giving she's the head of the Marine Research Council, is giving a talk on the state of the lagoon. It might be nice if some of you or you send a representative to see what she has to say. I'll be there, and I'm sure there are others that'll be there. But anyway, I just would like to see the lagoon, make sure that we're spending the money to clean up the lagoon, and it's worth the money to do it. It will cost money. We know it's going to cost a lot of money, but over time we can do it if we put our mind to it. And I sure hope that you will put your mind to it and go tonight.
Commissioner
Your Spoonbill Marsh, I'd love to have some of those crabs.
A couple things. Mr. Whittle, if the audience was listening to you, they could have taken away that the only thing that we're doing at Spoonville Marsh is basically diluting the brine from the reverse osmosis system. But in fact, we're also blending that with water from the lagoon. So we're taking polluted water from the lagoon, and that also is getting cleaned up. So it's,
it's 2.5 times.
I understand, but if you were listening, from what you said, nobody from the audience could have understood that. So I just want the audience to understand that we are cleaning water from the lagoon there. And also, I don't know if you're aware of it, some people aren't, but when we authorized the 1-cent sales tax, we put aside for at least the first 5 years, 20% of that for lagoon projects. So we have a dedicated source of funds for that for the next years. And a lot of people just don't understand the type of projects we're doing. In addition to the Spoonville Marsh, we have the Egret Marsh, we have the Osprey Marsh, which has a additional passive system that's going to be opening up this summer. And we've got the North County passive system, which is being designed now as we speak, so we're moving forward with that. And we're also doing multiple smaller projects, like a small passive system at the Jones Pier, working on a living reef down by Round Island Park, and we're working on about 5 or 6 other small projects that we hope to start implementing in the next 2 or 3 years. So to dispel the idea that the county is doing nothing about the lagoon, I just want to put that all out there. We've been reasonably aggressive and steady working on projects to help the lagoon return to health for the last 8 to 10 years. I agree we need to do a lot more, and I believe this board is dedicated to the idea that we're going to continue to do a lot more over the next years, especially as we get better science, which will help us direct our efforts.
As I say, I'm willing to spend more money.
Well, keep in mind that if we increase your taxes by 20%, it would go for county projects, not your city project, to clear up your project, so you wouldn't be helped at all by that. And Lord knows, we're not about to suggest we do projects in the city of Vero Beach and have half the no-sayers in the city say we want to dismantle or disincorporate the city of Vero Beach again. So, I mean, we're cured of that. I mean, I don't know where that comes from or whoever suggested. I've been trying to find out from one reputable person who's actually promoted the idea of disincorporating or disemboweling the city of Vero Beach. I haven't found one. So I was very dismayed when your city council member brought that up. I mean, I understand citizens get confused and don't know much, so when like, a bunch of your citizens said that, okay, I can pass. But when a council member says something like that, I find that to be disingenuous and wrong. So.
Well, actually, I gave the same talk to the
and thank you for
last week at 3 o'clock on their meeting.
Thank you for helping me get this all out of my system. I appreciate that.
That's all right. Actually, when I had my dock extended, the EPA made them come and swim in our canal to see if there was any grass that would be displaced. And I told the EPA, if you did your job, I'd have grass. But I don't have any grass because you're not doing your job.
Well, your dock may be, preventing the sun from getting down to the grasses which they need. So,
Well, it's a ways down there, yeah.
Well, Herb, I do want to reiterate what Commissioner Solari said. I think this board is committed to doing the project we can with the lagoon. We've committed the 20% of the sales tax money over the next 5 years. We have other projects going that we're doing as well. We're doing some septic to sewer projects as well. So, as Commissioner Solari iterated, we have a lot of projects that are actually today, taking nutrients out of the lagoon. And one thing, Commissioners, while we're on this, I think we all have kind of, and I think Mr. Whittle's presentation kind of highlights, we haven't done a great job of getting the word out about what we're doing for the lagoon. And I thought maybe one thing we could do is, you know how when the United Way does their annual fundraising, they have these kind of thermometers all around town that show, you know, how they're increasing. And maybe we should have some kind of interactive scoreboard or something out there in the community that every month is updated with how many pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus we've removed from the lagoon as some type of public awareness and get people talking. So just an idea to, you know, throw out and y'all think about, but I think we do need to do a better job of highlighting the fact that we are pulling out thousands of pounds of nutrients every month with the projects we have in the ground right now. So
I got one question.
Okay.
Your main relief canal, you grow a bunch of I don't know what it is, but anyway.
Lettuce.
There's water hyacinths, water lettuce.
Hyacinths in the back. But the problem was, a few years back, we had a downpour over the weekend. And all those hyacinths ended up in my dock because I was told, you don't have anybody to run that ladder on Saturday or Sunday. And so, since it was over a weekend, they couldn't take it out. Is that still true?
No, and Herb, you and I had talked about this. You know, we do try to hold back the vegetation so it can stay in the canal and pull the nutrients out of the water. And then periodically we open up the sleeves and let it go through the removal process. When we get a heavy countywide downpour like that, two things is, one is we can't restrict the flow of the water. Indian River Farms won't let us restrict that flow because they want to move that water for flood control. That's their responsibility. And two, we're draining the entire county, and there's water vegetation all the way back to the west. So when we get a heavy flow like that and all that vegetation starts moving, we can't hold it all back. Some of it's going to get in the lagoon. So I think that's when we have a big heavy downpour and the water control district opens those gates, then a lot of stuff comes out, and we just can't catch all of that. Physically, we can't.
One other thing, on Indian River Boulevard, you've got a ditch on both sides, and you got vegetation growing in it, which probably takes out a lot of the toxins from the road.
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while, you come and dig them all out. And that to me is wrong, because when you do that, then suddenly all that water will just flow right into the lagoon fast. Whereas if the vegetation is there, it slows it down. Yes, it doesn't drain quite so fast, but at least it takes some of the toxins out.
Yeah, and I think, and I can let my public works director maybe answer that more accurately, but sometimes when you remove that vegetation, it does help the drainage, which is the main function. But as the vegetation is taking up the nutrients, if you remove that vegetation, you're now taking those nutrients completely out of the system. They're gone.
Yeah.
If you leave them there and they mow it and cut it, then it's just going to fall back in and decompose and add back in. So my belief has always been that periodically removing the vegetation takes those nutrients completely out of the system. But I don't know if Rich can speak to how often we do that, or I don't. Do we do that, Rich, or is that the city?
Well, that's county out there. I'm talking about. We're talking about the county on Indian River Boulevard.
Right, but a lot of that runs through the city, so I don't know if we maintain it or the city. So, Rich?
Rich Barrica, Public Works Director. We maintain periodically, and maybe once a year, maybe every couple of years. The whole reason for maintenance is to keep the drainage.
Right.
While I understand that the grass is good, you know, the plant life is good for removing nutrients, but it impedes drainage, which impacts the residents, which impacts the streets, which impacts the quality of life, so that we need to keep these drainage features open. Now, do we maintain them like we should a lot? No, because we understand that we need to keep the grass in there. It keeps turbidity out. It helps filter out some of the stuff that comes out of the subdivisions. However, we've got to clean them periodically in order to keep the drainage systems flowing. And Indian River Boulevard, we do maintain the section that's in the county. Even though it's in the city, it's our roadway.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Herb, for coming this morning.
All right, thank you.
We have one public notice item. Mr. Reingold, if you would do the honors, please.
Thank you very much. We have a notice of a scheduled public hearing for June 5th, 2018. This is a county-initiated request to amend the text of the sanitary sewer sub-element for septic to sewer conversion and the associated text of the future land use element, and amend the text of the coastal management element for sea level rise and associated text of the future land use element of the county's comprehensive plan. These are legislative in nature. Again, this will be a scheduled public hearing for June 5th, 2018. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. Moving on to the county administrator matters, we have the Mainland Boat Launch Joint Venture and Jason Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in February, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to explore installing a boat ramp at the city property there, at the old power plant site at the intersection of 17th Street and Indian River Boulevard. Staff did meet with city council staff to see what parameters we could do that under. There were several constraints that were placed on the site or that are due to the nature of the site. We asked the city whether they would be willing to participate in some of the costs to develop or to assist in design and permitting or to operate the facility. The city staff indicated that they would not recommend that. Their position, and it's understandable, is that they already operate 2 boat ramp facilities just across the river from there, one at McWilliam Park and one at Riverside, and that they didn't seem to have a capacity situation there. So with that information, staff has decided to look at the other parameters involved. One of the issues that we will face if the county decides to move forward on a project there is we anticipate some permitting challenges. That area is indicated as a safe haven, one of 8 safe havens, pardon me, in the state of Florida, as designated by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. That would likely present a design challenge. There may be barriers to getting the project permitted. There may be significant mitigation expenses that would need to be made. It was determined that that was a warm water aggregating area. Some of that's probably due to the fact that there was a power plant there and there was a warm water source. That has now, of course, gone away. However, there are concerns that sometimes a manatee, even though there's not warm water there now, they may, like some of us, we get nostalgic for our younger days. We go back to where we used to go to when we were younger. And even if there's no warm water there, there's something in there telling those manatees to go look for warm water over there. So that's my 101 simplified understanding of the manatee situation there. Those are the types of things we would be up against as far as from a permitting standpoint that would likely make it a challenge to get it permitted, drag the process out, and increase our costs. There are also some access limitations there. The preferred driveway entrance from the city that we talked about was one that is, you can see it on the overhead there, the southernmost entrance. That's 65 feet from the 17th Street Indian River Boulevard intersection. Right now you have ingress and egress there for the power plant site. However, if you have trucks pulling in there towing a boat, they have to slow down to make that turn. And could interfere with the operation of that intersection, which is already a very busy intersection. Also, if you'll note here in the picture, someone coming southbound to access the site from the north would have to make a U-turn at that intersection and then immediately turn back into that driveway. That would be a significant challenge there. There is an option to use a further north access point, which would make the ingress and egress a little bit better, but it may still be a challenge for those southbound folks where a U-turn may be necessary. That would also put more constraints on the site for the city of Vero. When we met with the city manager, they were okay with us using this southernmost entrance. I have not discussed with him whether they would be okay with the county using accessing from further to the north and that's driving the folks down south to get to the boat ramp area, because I know that they have potential plans for that site once the power plant is removed, and we would not want to interfere with what their plans are there. Anything would have to be harmonized. There are also significant underground improvements in the area where the boat ramp would likely go. That's near the bridge, just north of the bridge. Yeah, it's hard to tell from where we're looking at. We're can't get oriented on this, but there's a bunch of underground infrastructure that were water intakes for the power plant. That's in this area. That infrastructure would have to be removed at significant expense. So staff thinks that the cost to develop this site into a boat ramp, where we would be looking at this location here, where the arrows are, would be the likely boat ramp location that staff would recommend. You could have a wide opening. You could maybe do 2, potentially 4 different ramps there. But the cost would be about $2 million. In addition, the city's not willing to operate the facility, so the county would have to operate any facility that's placed there. Staff doesn't recommend doing that. We don't operate these facilities in any other municipalities. And so for the reasons mentioned, staff would be reluctant to recommend moving forward at this time. So our recommendation is to not move forward with a boat ramp at this location. And if that's the board's decision, we would notify the city of that intention, that we're not looking at moving forward on this project. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Jason. Commissioners, any discussions of staff? Commissioner Slory.
I'd like to thank staff for a good presentation on that. I think they've caught a lot of the problems with it. And I really can't see the county spending a couple $1 million on another boat ramp when there are 2 city boat ramps within basically 5 minutes of that location. I'd also like to note that the county does have about $100 million in conservation lands that was still basically starving of funds, both capital and operational. And I would like to see, because I've almost a broken record on this, any additional funds we have on this, trying to make those properties, which we bought because of a referendum that the citizens told us to buy the properties, used to make those properties more accessible to all of the people in Indian River County. And so for those reasons, I'm going to make a motion to agree with staff recommendations, notify the city that we will not be pursuing the project, and move on.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slory, second by Commissioner Adams, to approve staff recommendation to not move forward with the joint boat ramp. Any discussion among the commissioners? All right, public comment. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Paul Fafeta, chapter president of the Coastal Conservation Association. This has come up very fast, and the only thing I would ask at this time is that this matter is tabled. I think that there would probably be a lot more people in attendance to discuss the pros and cons of this issue, given more publicity on this matter. I get the agenda on Friday like a lot of folks do, and contacted some folks about this matter, and because of scheduling, some people couldn't make it today. But I think the importance of this, and I don't disagree with what a lot has been said, but I just think because of the importance of this and the discussion that we've had over the last couple of years about the need for a South County west side of the river boat ramp, it would be immature on our part, your part, to pass this without having more discussion and allowing more people to come forward on this matter. And that's basically what I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Chris Pope, 2305 46th Avenue in the county. I represent Youth Sailing Foundation. I'm on the board. We are located just adjacent to where you're considering putting in the boat ramp, and we have children on the water 7 days a week, young children starting at age 9, and they're in sailboats. They don't have motors, and this would just be a very inappropriate place to put in a boat ramp launch where we'd have a lot of people coming and going, perhaps drinking during the day while they're out on the water, and our kids would be at risk. And we have a long-term lease, which includes some of the areas underneath the 17th Street Bridge, and we just want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that we plan to be there for a long time, and that is a safety issue.
Good, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Adams, for staff recommendation to not pursue the joint boat launch project. All those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Jason. Moving to departmental matters under B, Emergency Services. We have the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, Audiovisual System Upgrade, and I believe Chief Stone will be making the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, I think basically that the Emergency Services is just jealous of our great new system here.
Oh, absolutely,
and
yeah.
wants to, upgrade, but I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Flesher. Tad, is there anything we need to know other than the backup? Yes, sir. Okay. Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Moving on to, we pulled item 12C1. So that would conclude all of department matters. We move on to the county attorney matters. The first item is customary use, and I believe Ms. Kate Cotner will be making the presentation. Good morning and welcome, Kate. And of course, James Gray will be assisting. While they're setting up, commissioners, just a quick thing. James and Alexa and Kendra and Stephanie and all of our gang was up at Captain Hiram's on Sunday. Very successful lionfish festival, and turned out the weather held off. Had a lot of people coming through eating a lot of lionfish. So James, you and the gang, congratulations on a job well done.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. So again, for the record, Kate Cotner, the Assistant County Attorney, and I have James Gray here with me from Public Works. And we're here today to talk about customary use. In the 2018 legislative session, a new law was passed that made some changes to customary use. And so we wanted to kind of walk everyone through it and give the board some options on how to move forward. So to start with, we need to kind of set a foundation as to what customary use is and also what it is not. So Article 10, Section 11 of the Florida Constitution actually provides that all the land seaward of the mean high water line is in trust for the people. So it's open for public access for beachgoers to sunbathe, to walk. And this nice little, I guess, picture here kind of describes the difference between the mean high water line and what's public and what is traditionally private. And just so everyone's aware, this is called the public trust doctrine. So customary use is actually formulated in case law. And dating back to 1974, there was a case that basically said that, the beaches were in trust for the people and that the people and the public have a right to access and enjoy Florida's oceans and beaches. As you know, this is a big tourism draw for the state of Florida. The Supreme Court also held that customary use is established where the recreational use has been ancient, reasonable, and without interruption and free from dispute. This creates an interest it does not create an interest in the land itself, so it's not really an easement. It's just more of a common law. Because people have used it for a long time period, they are entitled to continue using it. This is, like I said, referred to as the customary use doctrine. This was later, some people will say expanded, other people will say limited, in 2007, where basically the court said that customary use is established by an area of land. That doesn't mean it's an entire mile of beach, but it also doesn't mean that it's parcel by parcel. And recently, there's been a lot of controversy. Not so much here, actually not at all here, but it has been controversy in different areas of the state, especially on Walton County, where a lot of litigation ensued because Walton County took steps to enact an ordinance which said that all of their beaches had customary use. They went through their archives, they found old historical pictures where people were using the beaches, and this upset some of the property owners because, as you can see from the pictures here, the property owners were putting up signs of no trespassing, putting up fencing, because they didn't want people, beachgoers, to access their private property. And that's actually what I just talked about, I'm sorry. So the case from Walton County was actually decided in 2017, very recently. And basically the federal district court said, because there's nothing in Florida law which prohibits an ordinance like this, where it establishes this wide range of customary use, that it was allowed. So from that, there was legislation. And so Chapter 2018-094, which is also known as House Bill 631, it prohibits a government entity from adopting or keeping in effect an ordinance or rule that establishes customary use of privately owned dry sand areas. The government entity seeking to establish customary use is required to go through a new process, which includes holding a public hearing, giving formal notice of intent, providing notice to all of the individual parcel owners, and then filing a complaint with the circuit court to determine whether the land is subject to the customary use doctrine. So after we go through all of the hoops, the local government then has to go to court, and they get to redetermine and reweigh all of the evidence. There's a couple of provisions that are important. One is a grandfather clause, which puts into place that any ordinance adopted prior to January 1st of 2016 is allowed to continue. But there's another clause, which is important for us because we don't have an ordinance. And it states that any government entity may raise customary use as an affirmative defense in proceeding challenging the ordinance that was adopted prior to July 1st of 2018. Considering that's right around the corner, if we were going to adopt an ordinance, if this board sees fit, then now is the time. So what are some unintended consequences of this new law? There's a lot of rumors out there. The positive news, I think, and it's not here, but the positive news for us is that our tidal flow is pretty wide, as opposed to, let's say, on the West Coast where you have a couple feet. We also, and we're going to go into because of our beach renourishment program, thanks to James Gray, headed by him, we have a line that's not the mean high water line, but it's actually the erosion control line that we use that gives that public access. So, and it talks about it in here. Once we establish that erosion control line, it replaces that mean high water line, and while it's usually higher than the mean high water line, it doesn't include the sand dunes. So this creates a potential issue if we have a storm event that impacts our sand dunes and we have to go onto private property. What if Indian River County is denied access to certain areas of the beach by coastal homeowners? It also could be an issue with sea turtle monitoring. So here's a fun little picture which kind of lays out where your traditional mean high water line is, as well as where a traditional erosion control line is. And then when we do, and James, I'm going to ask you to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when we do beach renourishment projects, we establish a temporary construction easement, right?
Correct. And for the record, James Gray, County and Natural Resources Manager. So yes, before we do a beach project, we have to establish an erosion control line. It's a part of Florida statutes, and we'll go into that in a little bit in the presentation. But also, we also need to receive permission from the homeowners because their line or their property extends now down to the mean high water line or the established erosion control line. We need to have a temporary construction easement signed, and these easements are also recorded, so that allows the county to enter private property or access private property on the beach. Nothing on the upland, but just on the beach specifically. So from, it's not really well depicted here, but essentially the property line that we access would be seaward of the dune vegetation. So nothing on the upland portion, but all the beach portion. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood as well for the public and the commission.
So, and this is, again, more so for the public. Why is this important? Why do we care about beach renourishment and why, not being able to access certain areas? And so these are pictures of, after storm events, how the public and private infrastructure becomes threatened because the erosion is all the way up to the vegetation. And it also, when we don't do our beach renourishment projects, it narrows the usable beach. So then we have less room for the public to be able to access.
Okay, before you leave that, so James, the picture on the left where it's eaten away fairly, looks like within 5 or 8 feet of the actual building there, where would we say, okay, where's the mean high water line? Is it right there at the base of the escarpment?
So the mean high water line, based on this picture, would be where the you can kind of see those beach scallops or cusps on the lower portion along the berm. Yeah, thank you. So the mean high water line erosion control line would be actually probably a little bit further seaward of that, based on this condition, because the beach in this example has been lowered as well. So your elevation is a little bit different as well. But for the most part, right around these cusps is pretty much private versus public. So public down below, private from here landward.
And then, so if we came to do a renourishment project there, we would be placing sand on the private property.
Correct. So sand would be placed, I'll go to this photo. Sand would be placed from the dune escarpment seaward along the berm, and actually below mean high water, which is roughly in this area. So we would be extending the beach project, or pushing the mean high water line, the traditional mean high water line, the ordinary mean high water line, out several tens of feet, if not maybe 100 feet or so.
And then,
on.
so this would be where you would go to the property owner and say, hey, we need your permission to put sand on your private property. And in this case, the property owner would probably be crazy not to sign it and say, yeah, please, because I'm about to become a underwater reef or something.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, also on this same slide on the left, so you have the mean high water line, but where would the erosion control line be? At the base of the escarpment?
So just a little bit more clarity on erosion control line, or the mean high water line. That's based on an elevation at a time of a survey. Right. So, and it's based on 19.5-year average and so forth, not to get further into it, but so that's always dynamic, that's always in flux. When we have a beach project, the erosion control line within a year of the project or beach project has been established. So that fixes that erosion control line or mean high water line in perpetuity. So that's based on the elevation at the time of the survey prior to the beach nourishment project. So in this case, although not really evident, I'd say the mean high water line, erosion control line is about the same area, but it could be actually further landward from where this photo kind of shows where the tide mark is. I'd say on average maybe about 30 to 40 feet from that flat portion of the berm is really where the typical, because we have really narrow beaches in Indian River County, that's probably where the erosion control line average would be in this case.
Okay.
And if somebody opted out to not grant a construction easement, you would then have to hypothetically skip their property, go to the next person, but then it creates a long-term problem where their dune is not brought further out to where it provides the protection.
Correct. So if we were to not receive a temporary construction easement, let's just say from Summer Place down to Dune House Point, which is in Sea Oaks. So if we follow that, we have our county park right here, Wabasso Beach Park. Disney, if they were to not sign the temporary construction easement for whatever reason, we would only be allowed to or authorized to place sand below mean high water. So we would skip all the upland portion, prevent, or we would not build a dune feature there. We would not build the upper berm feature. So everything below mean high water, which that would have a negative effect for the homeowners or the properties, the beaches down south of an area that has been skipped. But we can still place material below mean high water on
I don't know why
public plans.
anybody would not sign it, but we've seen people make unusual choices over time that I would be surprised if somebody just said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't know why, but that
Sure.
could be their answer.
But it happens in other communities. I mean, we have spoken to our sister communities, and they have experienced that. So it is a concern that we're trying to avoid. So other possible unintended consequences. There may be an issue in the future for FEMA funding. So Indian River County has formalized a beach preservation plan, and it includes interlocal agreements with the City of Vero Beach and the town of Orchid. Through these agreements, the county assumes legal responsibility for large-scale beach management projects. And historically, we have not had any issues with FEMA funding. But there's been some recent changes, as we just discussed, with the state law, as well as the federal law post-Hurricane Matthew. And we know that our sister community to the north in Flagler County has had some issues with this. They were denied FEMA funding to assist with a protective berm after Hurricane Matthew because it lacked a customary use ordinance. And kind of our legal instrument to establish that responsibility. So it's something that we need to be aware of moving forward, but we're watching that closely. So options. One option is to adopt an ordinance. If we do so, we need to do it before July 1st of 2018. And again, this is not an ordinance that's going to be grandfathered in, but what the law allows us to do is to use customary use as an affirmative defense. So if the board decides to move forward with an ordinance, it would entail some research, probably with the Historical Society, to find pictures and evidence of historical use of our beaches. Another option is to enter into written agreements with individual property owners along the coastline so that we have the permission to traverse along their area, which is obviously above the mean high water line and erosion control line. And James, you want to talk about some of the agreements that we historically have entered into? There's like 10 years and 25 year.
Yes, so with our beach projects, since we've done several of them over the last couple of years, we've had these temporary construction easements that have been, as we learn, renourishment intervals and so forth. The initial temporary construction easements for our sectors 1 and 2 beach and also our sector 7 beach, South County beaches, were about a 10-year term. This actually fell within the renourishment of about a 7-year renourishment interval, but we're finding, because of the beaches have been relatively stable prior to, of course, the last recent couple of years, that there was no need for beach nourishment in the area or limited nourishment, so temporary construction easement would not have to be exercised. However, with Sector 3, we saw that the nourishment intervals are getting pushed out further and so forth, so our temporary construction easement issued or offered to the homeowners was a 25-year TCE, temporary construction easement, instead of the traditional, what we were used to prior to that, 10 years. So this gives us now an opportunity with the forthcoming Sector 3 project, which is under design right now. We would not have to go back to homeowners requesting a temporary construction easement. However, that easement does not say anything relative to transversing those properties, because this was not a major issue at that time. It just really was strictly for placement of sand along those private sections of shoreline. So these easements would include all of that relevant language, including customary use relative language, as well as construction language.
What about sea turtle?
And yeah, thank you, Kate. And also, we would also, because the unknown still is sea turtle monitoring and restrictions to that point, obviously Kendra and her staff are out there, volunteers are out there monitoring, and there could be an opportunity for homeowners to not necessarily allow access to monitor nests and so forth. So these easements would also include a provision to allow professional, if you will, monitors out there doing the endangered species cataloging. So that's the kind of things that we were thinking and kicking around internally as far as what this option would entail.
And the final option is the creation of a special taxing district. It's called an erosion control district. There are 3 in the state of Florida right now that we know of. St. Lucie County has one, the town of Jupiter Island, and Captiva. And with these districts, it's under Chapter 161, you're authorized to raise funds to support your beach and shore preservation program, but it's also, there's another element to it. It authorizes you to enter upon private property for purposes of making surveys and drillings and examinations, and that entrance onto the private property will not be deemed as trespassing. You can even take it a step farther. In the Captiva plan, they placed in their internal rules that if there is an emergency repair or maintenance order that's needed because of a storm event, then they are allowed under their bylaws to enter onto private property to make that emergency repair. So those are 3 options for the board, and so I think that the most urgent one, that the just as far as staff recommendation, we need to decide, the board needs to decide whether or not we need to move forward with an ordinance, because there is a time constraint there.
Thank you, Kate and James. Commissioners, any questions of staff? So I guess, Kate, looking at this, I don't think we've had the issue with trespassing on private property that some of the panhandle counties have had, because of they get a huge influx of spring breakers. They might have 10 or 15,000 people on the beach and spilling over into the private property, and probably a lot more noise and things going on that the people are opposed to. So, but at the same time, would you say that having an ordinance gives us the legal protection for a future challenge, and is that worth the trade-off with a potential Bert Harris case or something? Or maybe Dylan. Let's see.
I mean, well, the ordinance would give us the authority to raise the affirmative defense. I still think the question that homeowners would have, or anyone who was challenging would say is, well, you know, in front of my area or in front of this area, you didn't have it, you haven't demonstrated it. So they would still be able to counter there. But nonetheless, even by establishing the ordinance before July 1st, and this is a real problem for a lot of the counties that I've spoken to, is we're all very concerned about the potential Birch Harris liability or just straight takings liability that may come with the adoption of this ordinance. I can tell you my last conversation with the Brevard County Attorney's Office is they were very skeptical of moving forward with an ordinance because of the liability issues. But on the other hand, Flagler is running straight ahead to protect their community interests. Essentially, the ordinance would just allow us to at least be able to affirmatively use that defense in any proceeding about customer use. I wish we had more time to have kind of analyzed the ramifications. This came upon us very quickly at the end of session. So I definitely want to thank Kate and James for quickly kind of jumping on this, putting something together and bringing it back to the board.
Jason?
Yeah, and I'd like to say, you know, once again, the state has given us a bunch of bad choices to choose from. I don't think it's the right thing to do to move forward. I wouldn't recommend going forward with the ordinance at this time, just because of what Dylan talked about. We could be looking at takings claims. It could be very challenging. I think the best action is option 2. However, I would say we need to make sure that ability to traverse or transverse the property is very important. I am concerned about the FEMA reimbursability. As you know, we've gotten significant FEMA funding to renourish our beaches after these storms, and FEMA is only going to pay us for what we're legally obligated to do. They're not going to pay us for anything that we thought was a good idea to do, or it was nice to do, or out of the goodness of our hearts we did. And they've gotten more persnickety about this lately. For instance, we had to enter into the interlocal agreement with the city of Vero most recently to establish who had responsibility for what on those beaches. because they were not going to provide reimbursement to us for Sector 5 in the city of Vero unless we had a document showing legal responsibility. We didn't really have those issues after the 2004 storms to this degree. So we need to make sure that anything we do does establish that ability to transverse that area of the beach for the public, for us to do our sea turtle monitoring, which is required in order for us to even be able to do a beach renourishment project. So I would recommend option 2 from where I sit, but as I say, we're stuck with a bunch of bad options because in my mind, the state didn't like a court ruling that happened last year in Walton County that was completely different than our county. And one of the reasons we say home rule a lot, but Walton County has a bunch of spring breakers and there's a lot of different issues going on there that resulted in that conflict they had that we don't really have here, but now we're stuck with a mess because the state didn't like the solution to Walton County's problem out in the Panhandle. With, I say a bunch to basically say that, of course, this is a policy decision for the board to make, but I would recommend of those options, option 2, but with the caveat that we need to make sure that we tie down our rights on that property landward of the erosion control line.
And like I like to say, the state took a sledgehammer to something that needed a surgical scalpel here. Commissioner Solari.
Yes, we need to thank our friends in Tallahassee. Yeah, so there may be the takings claims, but I also tend to think that if we go ahead with option 1, we may upset more people than we actually not help, but say that we're working with. I mean, I think that working with the citizens of Indian River County has worked well for us for a long time, and I hate for us to use the strong arm of the state because the state used or misused the strong arm of the state. To me, it's just putting us in a wrong cycle. So I'll be happy to listen to other options, but I'm certainly not supportive of option 1.
Okay. It's just past 10:30. I've had a request for a break, so we're going to take a brief break. Are there some folks here that want to speak to this in the audience? Tuck or Mark? Okay. Commissioners, before we break, one thing I would like to do is we've got 3 options. The third one is a special taxing district. I think that would take a lot more work than we should talk about today. And so by consensus, can we go ahead and agree that option 3 is not part of the discussion going forward for today's purpose? And we'll just...
If it's not part of the discussion, I'm going to make a motion for option 2 then.
Okay, we can... we have a motion from Commissioner Solari for option 2.
For those at home, could option 2 be put back up on the screen again?
Commissioner Adams, were you seconding that? Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So, but at this point, like I said, I do want to take a brief break. But I think, for those of you that wish to speak, we're not going to talk about the taxing district, so you don't have to get all fired up about that today, okay? So with that, we have a motion for option 2 on the table. We'll go ahead and take a brief 10-minute break. Back to order. At this point, we do have a motion from Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams for option 2. Commissioners, is there any discussion among the commissioners on option 2?
I do. Under option 2, where you have entered into written agreements with individual property owners, one, can we make those perpetual, that they would move between one owner to the next, or what kind of time frame can you put on them so we don't have to worry about an untimely expiration of an agreement?
First off, with regards to the ownership issue or the application issue, yeah, certainly they would run with the land. So they would be tied to that piece of property, okay. And so if someone sells it, they're selling it with that.
With that.
And obviously we would work with terms of just making sure that proper duration, whether it's 20 or 30 years or whatever, applicable to the project, and also consistent with our statutory limitations on the time running.
Okay, the longer the better.
And
thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, and for Jason, from your knowledge on dealing with FEMA, would the agreement satisfy their requirement so that we would not have to offset it with county funds?
I'd like to be able to tell you that I feel certain that we could. I have questions about that. It's one of the things that we will have to work through the process. The good thing is, well, the good thing is we're working with FEMA right now on some beach renourishment projects where hopefully we can hash that issue out. I think it will help, but it is something that I worry about going forward based on.
Then pass it to Dylan. As far as Counselor, as far as the legal responsibility, would that stand as legal responsibility to renourish if we had the written agreement?
I think it's a quality basis by which to make the argument that we have the responsibility to do so. I mean, if we've got it in our written agreements that there is a customary use, and that essentially gives the public the right to access, and I think that would be a very good argument for us. Again, as Jason alluded to, we've had our difficulties with FEMA and FEMA's attempts to read out of, responsibilities and paying us. At the end of the day, if the board was not to adopt an ordinance by July 1st, we always have the ability to move forward with something in the future. They're just tougher standards and tougher things we have to accomplish, hoops to jump through in order to accomplish the goal of adopting an ordinance. So obviously, if it was the board's intent, and as Jason is recommending, our first attempt would be to work with FEMA to show them that our written agreements were adequate. To the extent they were withholding funds or the like, then we certainly could move forward with the ordinance procedure that the Florida legislature has established.
We discussed it at Beach and Shores yesterday as well, and there are many constraints, and it's unfortunate that, this all started with a group of signs in Walton Beach, and, they don't have turtles, and we have concerns, and I can see tremendous argument over property rights and signage and litigation that we would not have to endure if we went with this option, as opposed to giving the people exactly what they had before this legislation, which is option 1, and we just go ahead and apply the sand and apply for the permits and apply for funding. But it's a tough hurdle, and there are legal limitations on both.
I mean, I'd love to give a more definitive statement on the FEMA issue. I mean, but this board, as you know, has faced issues where FEMA, obligated projects, then turned around and took away $2.8 million from us, and we had to, threaten to file lawsuits, and luckily had other jurisdictions who were able to get money back through lawsuits that gave us the ability to recoup millions of dollars from FEMA. So I'm hesitant to be able to say that just because FEMA says you're good now with these agreements, that they may not walk away in the future, or they may never challenge it and be comfortable with them.
And that's the reason I can't give, and I hate to sound like we're bashing the state here, but one of the things that I don't think enters into their calculation or isn't a priority for them is that we have a mess to deal with based on what they've done. And if we end up getting deobligated for a FEMA beach renourishment project years down the road, that's a major impact to us. But I don't think that's as big a concern for the state as other things that made them pass this legislation.
By the same token, with option 2, could we eliminate the possibility of stakes and lines and bank ropes and other obstacles that people might want to put in place if we went with option 2, as far as the current legislation and the reason why we're all here because of what happened in Tallahassee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the goal would be to have a written agreement with a property owner that states, not only are we allowed to enter onto the property to do our sea turtle monitoring, not only are we allowed to enter onto property to provide the sand, but also that the public as a whole will be able to utilize that property under the customary use doctrine. And therefore, we have completely avoided the statutory framework and issues that have come up, and we will have that binding obligation and right through our agreements with property owners. And as one of the commissioners said earlier, well, as someone who's going to be looking at, the sea taking away their property, why are they going to look at that and turn that down instead of allowing us to renourish the beach and protect the beach?
Right, I mean, there's no incentive for someone not to sign the agreement, because then they're responsible for their sand pit, and that's what it will be. It will be a sand pit in the middle of the beach if they chose not to agree that the county would participate in renourishment and have the right and access to it.
Okay. Commissioners, any more questions or discussion? At this point, I'll go ahead and open up to the public. Mr. Tripson, you want to come up to the podium, please? You could give us your name and address for the record, please, Mark.
Yeah. Mark Tripson, 5020 12th Street, Vero Beach. And my family owns about 500 acres or 500 feet of ocean front. And I got some questions about all this. There's a picture you had of the, where is it? There it is. The building on the left. That's about what our place looks like right now. And in '08, I had surveyed, because we had to add sand. And our property line was basically at the bottom of the bluff. So we added sand and built it up, made it look pretty. And then, of course, it washes away again. But anyway, that's life in the fast lane. So a couple years ago, after watching it, a hurricane that was way out brought about 3 feet of sand up on what I always thought was public beach. But now I find out half of it's ours. But the survey says ours is the bluff, not ocean, towards the ocean. And then last year, the year before, we didn't have that sand that the hurricane had brought. And so I called DEP and said, I want to haul 80,000 yards in front on the beach, and that'll build it up. I'd figured, I think, about 3 feet to give us some sand there. And they said, no, you can't do that. That beach belongs to the state of Florida, and you'll be thinking it's yours if you start taking care of it. So now it says that we actually own almost to the water's edge. So does the property line depend on which government agency you're running at, looking at, or what? Because, see, I was willing to do that myself, spend that money. But now I don't know where our property line is. And we've always, for as long as somebody's wanted to walk on the beach, I guess the Spaniards did, they could walk wherever they wanted to. We don't try to stop them. I think it'd be cool, though, if that comes the case, you could get a sun pass there and put a stamp on their head, and as they walk back to send them a bill on their credit card. But that would.
I don't think the turtles are going to pay, though.
Pardon?
I think you have to give the turtles a pass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll split it with the county. But it looks like to me this is kind of a dumb thing to even be talking about. The beach is. That's public access, basically.
Well, Mark, and I think that's how this board feels, that if the state just would have kept their nose out of this, we'd be fine, and we'd just continue to do what we've been doing. But unfortunately, the state felt a need. They had to pass a statewide law that impacts all of us in unknown ways. And so we're now, unfortunately, I think Jason said, we're in this position where we have to kind of choose the lesser of the two evils almost. So
I understood. Out of the 67 counties, Indian River County was the only one objected to it. The governor didn't veto it because he said nobody complained about it.
Yeah, I don't know
then
that.
I find out that bill had been put in 3 or 4 different other bills, and if you fought it, you didn't get your funding. And so that's why everybody went along with it pretty much.
Well, and I can talk to the backstory of that if you'd like. So there were actually 2 different versions. One version was in the House, another version was in the Senate,
Right.
and they actually had 2 very different language. One would have made it parcel by parcel, which we did dispute, and another would have just set forth kind of a different way of moving forward to establish customary use. And what actually ended up passing was a deal that we were told that was made by a number of counties. We were not included in those discussions, unfortunately, and so it happened very, very quickly towards the end. And as the rest of I guess 63 or 65 counties were kind of assessing it. And if you think about it, actually it's quite less than that because it's only coastal communities that would be impacted. We didn't have enough time to come forward with legitimate evidence to say this is how it's going to impact us. So you're right, it happened very, very quickly, and now we're trying to.
What are we going to do? I mean, I understand if this thing goes through, you have a hard time getting FEMA money and any other money to repair your beach because it's individual ownership deals there. But it's better if you leave it like it was. I don't know if you can.
But I think option 2 is leaving it most like we have now, where we still will go, we might be a little bit more proactive in getting these agreements signed prior to a project, just so we have them in the books. But this is the way we've done our projects in the past, is when we identify a sector and begin the permitting. Part of that is to go out and James goes to the property owners and either gets that construction easement or, establishes a new erosion control line. Right. And so and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I understand option 2 is the closest to what we have been doing historically.
That's correct.
Yes, that is correct. We're trying to maintain the status quo. And if for some reason there are big unintended consequences, then we go back to the Florida legislature, I would think, is an option to say, this is what the law did and this is how we think could help fix it in the future. So I think we will not be alone in those arguments.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
And Mark, just to answer your question, whichever line makes your property value the highest taxable, that'll be one we'll go with. Okay?
That's the one you're on now.
Okay, well, good. We're all square. Thank you.
Yeah, it's no problem.
All right,
Somebody
good.
else pays it for me, so I don't care.
Sounds like commissioners.
Yeah. Good morning, Tuck. Name and address for the record. What'd you do to your foot?
Meniscus.
Oh, boy.
I kicked the dog. Tuck Farrell, 12546 North Highway, A1A, Vero Beach, Florida. Anyway, I'm president of the North Beach Civic Association, and I've talked to some of our people. This is a can of worms. There's no good choice here. It's not a winning situation, and it's not something we wanted. And if we could let it alone, it would be great, because no one that I know of really has minded the public using the beach. It's been a really wonderful situation here in this county. But we've got to deal with things in other places. The one thing that I would like to bring up is it is important to maintain the infrastructure of the beach. It's good for turtle nesting, but for property values and things like that. And if you don't maintain the barrier island, I mean, this sounds simplistic, but if the barrier island goes, the mainland is going to be in real trouble. The river will go and everything else. And that's not going to happen very easily in some places, but where it's the island's narrow or where there's real erosion, you could run into problems and then you lose roads and things like that. And I don't want to see the infrastructure be harmed. It's hard to make these choices. It really is. And you hope people will go along with signing, you get these erosion control lines, and it's hard to establish where anything is at any given time. You're going to have the high water mark, you're going to have erosion control lines all over the place, but maybe the answer is to get people to sign easements, and this has been done before when there have been nourishment projects. But there's no easy choice here, and when you get to an engineered beach and there's public money involved, we'd like for the public to be able to use the public and protect the dune and protect the sea turtle nesting. It's a win-win for everything if you can just protect the beach. And I think that should be the bottom line. Most important thing is to try to protect the infrastructure of the beach, because tourism is, of course, our #1 economic driver, and it's important for the tax base and things like that, which we all know, and we've talked about it before. But I hope we can struggle through this and try to find the best way to go, and maybe it's what you propose. I don't know the answer, and I think we may have to adopt to different things. You know, if we run into problems, then we'll just have to dump. I think we take the best shot today, and then we just have to go ahead and see what we can do in the future. And I think, and I appreciate that the commissioner's really on top of it, and Commissioner Fletcher was at the Beach and Shores thing yesterday, and the county attorney's office has worked really hard on this. And they've been in Tallahassee fighting through this thing and a lot of other issues. So I think we've got the best information we can, and we just have to deal with the can of worms, as I said. But I'll trust you guys to make the decision. I'm glad I'm not sitting there with you. But thanks for hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuck. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on the motion before us? Mr. Johnson, please come up. Good morning, Bob. Welcome.
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. I think that it would be suggested that you table this for a period of time, and let's hear from some of the other municipalities that are on the beach, Indian River Shores, and some of these folks that are out there, and see what they. So we have. It seems like it needs a lot of agreements from everybody before you jump in and come out with something that is not aware of, or publish an ordinance that the county is going to follow and make comments on it or suggestions at some future date. But I think that it would be helpful to have more input before you make a decision this early. I think you're going to get a lot of publicity just from this meeting alone. It's bringing a lot of people that bring their attention to the situation, and but I just like to think we need to have a little more discussion on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
And
Commissioner
Bob,
Fletcher?
to that,
I'm sorry, Councilman.
no.
I believe that if we table this at this juncture, under your suggestion, it might be good to see other jurisdictions, but we're seeing other jurisdictions move forward with not a solution, just they're reacting to the legislation. It's not a concrete solution. There are many contradictions that will apply. In addition, if we eliminate option one by not acting today, it just gets eliminated. And I don't think anybody wants to look at initiating another taxing district. I don't believe that you would be in support of that, or many people that are living in the oceanfront area, beachfront area. So if that's in case, we are limited right now with, again, the best of the worst options is to move forward so that we have something in place, minded that we are beginning to look at hurricane season. Hurricane season starts in just a few short weeks, and we would have to have something in place during that time. Is that correct, Counselor?
I believe it starts at the beginning of June.
Right, so we would have to have something in place.
Oh.
Otherwise, FEMA might say, you had no rules, so you have no money.
Well, and the issue on the tabling issue, Bob, is we have been told by the Florida legislature, you need to make a decision by July 1st. You need to adopt an ordinance by July 1st if you want to take advantage of this. So as you probably know, we have 3 meetings in June. And what I was looking for today was direction from the board to say, if we're going to move forward with an ordinance, I need a decision today, because if I'm going to advertise for an ordinance, I've got a very small window of time to take action. So I appreciate your desire that we take our time, analyze the issue, and I think that's important. It's just that the Florida legislature forced our hand to make a decision quickly with establishing a very short deadline for us.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting. I'm against tabling it. I think I support the motion that's on the floor. I think that's the least of all the evils. And I think one of your major concerns is if something comes up, you can't get somebody to sign off if you have to work on that property. Well, if you go back and look at your policies, starting with policy 1013, 1030, and the latest 1439, with eminent domain as a temporary condemnation for emergency use of that property, you could fulfill that need. So I think you're worrying about something you really don't have to worry about, my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Paladin. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, Commissioners, any final discussion? We have a motion by Commissioner Slory, seconded by Commissioner Adams for option 2. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Kate and James, thank you all very much for your efforts on that. Next item under the county attorney's matters is the county attorney's annual employment agreement. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. The county attorney's...
It's going to be a tight vote.
Yeah, stick around, Kate.
You might need to weigh in with a recommendation for him.
My contract expires on July 1st. I've been happy serving the board, serving the county, and serving this community. I would just like to renew the contract for another year. As usual, the only change in the proposed contract is simply just the dollar amount, which just includes the my current salary. With that, I turn it back over to the chair for discussion and a vote.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Zork. I was just going to comment, I think I always tell people, since I've been on the board, we've had some opportunities for department heads or county administrators, county attorneys, and we've kind of had a good balance of either promoting from within or from going outside and hiring from outside. And I think when we selected Dylan to be the county attorney was one of probably the very best decisions we've ever made on a personnel, probably only equaled by the decision to promote Jason Brown as an internal promotion for the county administrator.
Covering everything.
Yeah. But, ever since Dylan's taken over, the attorney's office has had a high pace, high tempo, a lot of things getting done timely, getting done very well. I think that the overall morale in that office is exceptionally high, and the work product is, in my mind, exceptional. I find Dylan to be conscientious, to be detail-orientated, and just making sure that anything the board needs or the chairman needs gets taken care of in a very timely manner. I'm usually not one, if you're evaluating an employee on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being good, I rarely give out 5s. I always think there's things to improve on, and so I'm usually a 4, 4.5 kind of guy. But I'd have to say, if I was putting this down on paper, I think Dylan would get mostly 5s for the work he's done. And so I'm very pleased to have him as a county attorney and look forward to his continuing as a county attorney.
Chairman, I'd like to add that for those of us inside, Dylan has assembled a great team to work with, but the one most valuable and tangible asset we get is those lovely baked items from Dylan's wife, who spoils us at the holiday time, and the great treats that we get to feast on. So that's, I guess it comes with the deal.
Well,
Is that a formal motion to add Christmas treats into the job description? All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork, to approve the county attorney's annual employment agreement. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Good morning again.
Joseph Paladin again. I definitely support Mr. Reingold. I think he's one of the better county attorneys we've had. Somebody of his caliber to work with our county. I think we're honored to have him here, and I'd like to see him continue.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the pub? Yep.
Tuck Farrell again, 12546 North Highway A1A. I think Dylan is one of the finest attorneys that I've had the pleasure to work with. I think he's eminently qualified, and I work in a lot of different counties where there are cattle ranches and things, and I've found he's very knowledgeable and easy to work with, and you're just lucky to have him. That you got him from Jacksonville, and don't let him go back.
Thank you, Tuck.
Thank you, Tuck.
Seal the deal.
Anyone else from the public wish to comment on the motion before us?
My name is Wilford Hart, 617 Place Southwest, Vero Beach. I had an opportunity to just walk in his office, and one of the employees were there, and I was trying to talk to her. She said, no, let me go get him. And he came right out, started talking to me. And it's rare that a county attorney would allow a person like me to come in and just hold a conversation with them. And I'm so proud of you, as well as Jason. And I want to thank this board here for bringing in this young talent so that you could be around a long time, both of y'all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, call the question before you ask for a raise.
Well, his raise is already in there, so. Anyone else? Yep. Good morning. Name and address.
Rigby, 8564 59th Avenue. I also agree that the county should keep Dillon. I've been through 2 county attorneys since Dillon been here. I've been around a long time, Dillon. And I've never had an hour's conversation with any of them except Dillon. He avoided me first for one time, but we met, my brother and I met, and we talked for 1 hour about one subject, and I didn't know he was so versed in the issue we were talking about. So he's well-rounded, he's swift, he's your Corvette. Keep him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rigby.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Dylan.
If I can just add, I just want to thank my entire staff. I mean, Bill DeBrawl and Kate and what she does in Tallahassee, and Christina and Nancy and Sandy. I'm able to get this stuff done and take the time to meet with people and spend so much time with the folks who call. And it really has to do with the fact that I've just got such a great staff all around me, and it really helps me do what I can do. So I just want to thank all of them as part of this discussion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Fleischer.
Now that the vote is done and he can't ask for a raise, I just want to say that we've heard some testimony from the citizens who have had contact and about his availability and approachability and knowledge. I will say that there's nothing worse than getting a call at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday and saying, we're going to have to wait until we can get somebody. No, wait a minute. You can call Dylan. You can call Dylan late at night, and he's responding through the weekend, any evening. He's been overwhelmingly available, even if he goes on vacation. He lets us know where he's going, what he's doing, and how he can be reached. And even though he has a great staff in his absence, Dylan is extremely accessible, especially when we're getting hit with information that we need some counseling on. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item under County Attorney, the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility Sale Letter of Support. Dylan.
Thank you very much. As the board is aware, the sale of the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility is still moving forward. The next step in the process will be the Public Service Commission hearing, which is scheduled for June 5th. County Attorney's Office has drafted a letter of support for the sale that we recommend be presented to the Public Service Commission. I will note that the staff report for the Public Service Commission comes out tomorrow. I assume probably tomorrow afternoon at some point. I will be searching for it and make sure a copy of it gets to the board as soon as I can. But what I thought would be important is not only recommending that the board approve the letter as presented, but also authorize staff to work with the chair in order to amend the letter depending on the outcome of the staff report. So if the staff report is in support, it might be nice to add a letter, just a sentence that says, and we support the staff recommendation. Obviously, if the staff report is in opposition to the sale, then I might have to work with the chair a little bit to beef up our letter to explain why they should overlook staff's recommendation and support the sale nonetheless. So simply just to recommend that the board approve the letter, but also authorize the county attorney and the chair to modify the letter based upon tomorrow's staff recommendation release. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. Commissioners, any questions?
I'll be happy to move the letter, but I have one comment or suggestion.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second the motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Solari, second by myself. Under discussion, Commissioner Solari.
Mr. Chairman, there's one part that says, I believe that the sale of the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility goes on. I'm just wondering if it would be stronger if we put the Board of County Commissioners has long believed that the best thing that can be done for economic development and provide special help for many of our low-income families would be to sell the to have all county electric customers have or share in low FP&L rates. So I'll just make that a suggestion, and I'll hand the suggestion over to you and Dylan. If you want to incorporate it, I'll leave it. The motion will leave it to you to decide based on Dylan's other comments about the staff recommendation and this.
I'm fine with the proposed changes from Commissioner Solari. So, Commissioners, any other discussion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Solari. I was the second, yep. Okay. There are no commissioner matters. We now move to special districts and boards. We have the Solid Waste Disposal District, the minutes of April 17, 2018.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Item 2, final pay for 10th Amendment to Republic Services for Hurricane Irma services. Good morning, Himanshu.
Good morning, Commissioners. Himanshu Mehta, Managing Director for Solid Waste Disposal District. In front of you today is the final pay for the 10 amendments to Republic Services for Hurricane Irma related services. A lot of words here, but just quickly to say that we have a contract with Republic Services. It started in 2010. It's good until 2024 for landfill and convenience center operations. As you recall, prior to the approaching Hurricane Irma, the governor declared a state of emergency, followed by county administrator on September 7th declaring a state of emergency for Indian River County. And prior to the storm, we opened up all the 5 convenience centers on Thursday. Typically, Oslo and Fellsmere are closed on Thursdays, but we opened them all up on Thursday and Friday so that our residents can get all the material out. Landfill was also open on both of those days. Due to the storm, we closed all the convenience centers on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, as well as the landfill. The landfill was able to be reopened on Tuesday the 12th after the storm, and the convenience centers, all of them, which are typically closed on Wednesdays, reopened on Wednesday, September 13th. It was after the storm, the first meeting that we had on Tuesday, we came to the board with a 10th Amendment to Republic Services for post-Hurricane Irma related services to clean up the site. But I do want to mention, as I said on this slide here, that we did have them open, keep this convenience centers open prior to the storm. Before I get into some pictures, just wanted to show you kind of the impact. If you just compare the prior year to September 2017 in terms of the various tonnages, this is looking at all the 5 convenience centers. We had a 47% increase in the amount of materials that was processed that month due to the hurricane impact. If we look at the load counts, about a 61% increase in terms of the amount of loads that were processed by Republic and their use of subcontractors. So the emergency services basically allowed them to do additional hauling services from the convenience centers, also to utilize additional labor for overtime hours. This is Gifford Convenience Center prior to Hurricane Irma. As you can see, people are lined up. We were just inundated. All the 5 centers were inundated, where we couldn't even remove the containers fast enough, and the stuff just kept coming in and coming in. And so here it is. After all the convenience centers were closed, we wanted to document what was going on with all the centers. This is actually, all the centers have been closed. This is, again, the Gifford Convenience Center. This is the condition we were inundated with all the public, that we couldn't get all the material out of there in time. This is the Winter Beach station. Again, everything is just full before the storm. All the way on the far right is kind of the Fellsmere Convenience Center. The ones on the left is the Roseland Convenience Center. Again, everything was just full. Here's looking at the scrap metal area at the Oslo Convenience Center. Again, everything is just full. And so what Republic Services did, and they brought in some subcontractors, Bergeron and Fulford Citrus, to help us recover from the impacts of Hurricane Irma. And overall, they did a great job in restoring the landfill and the convenience centers to normal operations. And according with the agreement that we approved, the 10th Amendment, they brought in Bergeron Services and Fulford for post-recovery storms efforts. The total cost for that was $111,986.89. They also utilized workers and some day laborers as well. That resulted in additional overtime hours. I have a table on the next slide to kind of show you. Again, we had an approved rate in the 10th Amendment, about $37 per hour, and that resulted in additional overtime hours of over $13,000. And again, this is for overtime when the convenience centers would normally be closed. So the routine contract services, when the centers were open, there is no additional expense for that. Overall, the total final invoice that they submitted was for $125,042.54. And again, just quickly on this slide to show you the days that we had them open, it identifies the locations that are normally closed. So these are all the centers that are normally closed. They brought in extra employees, kept the centers open, resulting in some additional overtime hours, and again, with the approved rate, resulted in additional cost. So staff recommends that the board approve this final pay to Republic Services in the amount of $125,042.54 for post-Hurricane Irma related services, as well as our contract allowed for a couple of days that we opened up. I think that Thursday before the storm, where Oslo and Fellsmere were closed, contract allows for us to reimburse them for that as well. And if you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions of Himanshu?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move staff recommendation.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Adams. Himanshu, two things. One is, any thoughts of how we can encourage people to clean their house out and do that kind of cleanup prior to 2 days before a storm hitting to try to alleviate the fact we have all that stuff there as the storm's bearing down on us?
Sure. You know, the next commission meeting, Stephanie's coming with what we do annually as a reminder that the hurricane season is starting. Remind folks to, you know, clean out a lot of their material prior to the storm, prepare for the storm as well. But this is the time to, you know, trim the trees and bring all that in now and not wait a couple of days before the storm. You know, we encourage folks to take things out of their yards and either put them away or discard them now, and so they don't become projectiles. But a lot of folks tend to unfortunately wait right before the storm, and you know, we get inundated. One of the things that we are in discussion with Republic Services that we would come back to the board sometime in June is you know, preparing some sort of a post-storm related services, just like we did here for 2018 hurricane season, and we're been discussions with Republic on what sort of lessons learned we have. One of the ideas is to possibly close 1 or 2 centers ahead of the storm, get them completely cleaned out, and keep the other 3 open. And then what we would do is the reverse. After the storm, those that have you know, empty containers basically ready to go after the storm, we can direct the public to those. And then while Republic, you know, goes ahead and cleans up the other stations that got inundated. So that's just a draft plan. We're going to continue discussions with them. The other part is the education, you know, getting the messaging out. We can certainly, through the convenience centers now, start relaying the messages to residents and get them to prepare before the storm.
Okay. And the second thing is, when Stephanie makes her presentation, you'd showed some pictures of the convenience centers. I think Republic had a great idea. I know they did it down at the Oslo Center for the brush removal. They put in some metal plates that they can raise up if there's not a dumpster there, so you know that area is not open. You got to find the open spot. And then they lay those plates down, and so when you throw your brush in there, it reaches out far enough that it makes sure it falls into the dumpster and not falling down between the wall and the dumpster.
Right.
And I thought that was a really good idea, and it really seems to help move the flow better too, because you know where the dumpsters are before you get out of your vehicle. So if you could have Stephanie take a couple pictures of that, so you can share that with the rest of the board, so they can see what's going on there. And I just thought that was a really good idea. So, okay, commissioners, we have a motion from Commissioner Slaughter, second by Commissioner Adams. Any other public comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. And the last item under Solid Waste Disposal District is the request to approve the redevelopment plan for the former South Gifford Road landfill site. Himanshu, you're going to kick this off, and then you have some company, I see.
Yes, again, Himanshu Mehta, Solid Waste Disposal District. What we want to talk to the Commission about is the redevelopment plan for the former South Gifford Road landfill site. And, you know, this is a project that started almost about 5 years ago. A lot of effort has been done over the last couple of years. And with me as a sort of an introduction, and it'll kind of sort of outline the rest of the presentation. Jill Johnson is with Geosyntec. She's a geologist, and she'll kind of go over the little bit of a history or a timeline of this project, and specifically their role that they worked on to develop this redevelopment plan. Followed by Stephanie Height. She's with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. She's going to describe a little bit of the process that we had in terms of the community meetings, the input that we obtained from the citizens, the process that they go through in terms of evaluating and taking all these options and then working with their engineer to kind of develop the costs and whatnot. And that will lead into a discussion by David. That's David Latham. He's with Geosyntec. That will go into sort of the visioning process that we went to, that Stephanie's going to talk about, how taking those ideas from the public and developing sort of the preliminary conceptual plan that we came up with, and some preliminary cost estimates they had. And then, you know, during this process, we've come to the board a couple times and we've obtained your input. And what you'll see, as David discusses in more detail, is sort of the latest final draft redevelopment plan that breaks things out into the various phases and some of the costs that are involved. And David's also going to touch on a little bit about future grant opportunities that may be available out there. And overall, to kind of set the stage, I want to emphasize that it's taken a while to get to this through this process. We appreciate the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and the grant efforts they did to allow this to happen. We had great involvement from the community through this process, and I think the message that we have communicated throughout and the community understands that this is a planning effort. This allowed a wonderful opportunity to take a site that's been sitting there for all these years and to take a potential look at what kind of opportunities we could have for redevelopment. The community and staff has emphasized throughout the process that there is no immediate funding available at this time for these concepts, and there is no set timeline set for any of these things. So without further delay, let me turn it over to Jill, and she'll go over the timeline and their scope.
Great. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you. It's good to be here again and see everybody, and we appreciate your time. And I just want to start by saying this has been a very rewarding process for me, working with the county and the community and the Regional Planning Council on this conceptual process. So we're just going to start off with a quick kind of overview of how we got to where we are today. Himanshu mentioned this process started originally in December 2013. We've been working over the last several years on this redevelopment and conceptual planning process under 2 different EPA grants through the Regional Planning Council. So in 2013, the board approved to apply for the first Regional Planning Council grant, and then under that it was focused on assessment activities at the site. Then more recently, what we've been working on is focused more on the planning and conceptual costing, and that's really what we're talking about today. So at the end of this timeline shows these couple meetings that we've been focused on. So we had community design workshops in December 2016 and July 2017, and we brought updates to the board after both of those. And then the last meeting under this grant that we're working on today is what we're here today to talk about. And just a little bit more detail about this specific grant and what we were tasked with working with the group on is it's a Brownfields Coalition Assessment Grant, and we had 4 specific tasks related to the conceptualization of some ideas. So the first was the community stakeholder meeting that I mentioned in December 2016, and then we spent a lot of time working through developing and taking those ideas from the community and developing conceptual designs and trying to put some broad numbers on those to give everybody an idea of what it might mean down the road. And then another community meeting where we went back, and Stephanie's going to talk about more details with the community. And then again today this is the 3rd meeting.
And when I quickly interject here is that throughout this Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, we've taken the opportunity not only to get input from the community, but to come back to the board and get some input. And we've had 2 opportunities. After the first meeting, when we sort of had the visioning process from the community, we came back, and on January 24th, the board sort of authorized the Regional Planning Council to continue with the tasks 2, 3, and 4 that was mentioned above. We had some discussions about beautifying the frontage sort of in the initial phase, that was something that the board wanted to do, at least to do some improvement in front part of the property. There was discussion about the convenience center that's there, and the decision was to keep the convenience center where it was, because that's a, there was a couple of options that we're looking around, whether that was a key factor. Does the convenience center stay where it is, or do we look at some expensive costs to move it? And the board directed us to keep the convenience center where it is in our planning process. However, the road and bridge compound would maybe get reduced to about a 12 and 15 acre parcel. We went ahead and had the consultants sort of kind of take those comments and redevelop some conceptual plans. And before we went back to the community again, we had a meeting with the board, and as you'll see later on, the initial conceptual plan, there was some high cost there. The board gave us again some directions about the frontage, and directed us to continue with the community meeting process, but to scale the project back, because the initial concept that you'll see, it was very costly. So the board kind of directed us to scale it back, and to basically go to the community and talk to them about prioritizing the projects into various phases, and that's the effort that you'll see David discuss here shortly.
Okay, so on December 10th, 2016, we had our first public meeting. The objective of that meeting was to brainstorm redevelopment ideas for the property, to get the public involved and give us ideas of what their wants and their needs are for that property. And at that meeting, we told them, just dream, let's not worry about cost, let's just see what do you want to see and how do you want to see this redeveloped. And a theme that came from that meeting was that the public wanted to make sure that the entire community benefited from this process, that it would benefit all citizens in the community, not just that neighborhood. And they were really grateful to have that opportunity to be able to provide the comments of what they wanted and then bring those back to you. Now, at the July 24th meeting, what we had done is we had taken what the community had come up with in their 2 plans, put that together, made 2 kind of final site plans, took information and some comments that you had and incorporated those into those plans, so that we could just kind of finalize a plan to bring back to you. Okay, so what did we hear from the public? What we heard from the public was they came up with 2 plans at our first community workshop. And the thing about those 2 plans is they have very similar ideas. There was the same kind of mindset between the 2 groups that were putting together plans. They wanted something different for the county. They didn't really want to focus on any more sports or anything like that. What they wanted, some of the things they wanted an amphitheater to be able to have music concerts and to have community plays and maybe some movies on the green. They wanted nature trails. They wanted an arts building that would allow like local artists to come and maybe paint and display their art for people to look at, and to maybe teach art to the community. They want a community garden with raised beds and a possible greenhouse. They wanted pavilions where they could have a farmer's market, family reunions. They wanted them open air with tables and without, and maybe a small kitchen just so if they wanted to have some kind of a party there or a wedding or something like that, that could also be done at this venue. What they wanted to do was create a regional destination so that they can enjoy families, that they can enjoy arts, that they can enjoy nature and events. So, but they wanted community benefits. They wanted to benefit the entire county. And they also talked about ways they could fund things. They came up with things like maybe some solar that could help power just that site. They had the Cultural Arts Foundation and maybe some urban farm grants that could help to forward some of these things that they saw and that they wanted in their community.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to speak a little bit about how we took the initial conceptual plan that we've been talking about here and had that evolve into what we're now considering more of a phased approach. The figure that you see in front of you here was the figure we had arrived at after getting the community input that Stephanie was talking about that involved these different elements that the community stated to us that they'd really like to see. And as Himanshu had mentioned, it incorporates the input that we received from all of you with the elements of keeping, for example, the existing convenience center right where it is, and keeping the road and bridge compound also in its current location. Obviously, one of the big concerns was this total cost estimate was in the 18 to 22, $million range. So we took a hard look at a lot of the different costs that rolled up into that and tried to figure out how could we make the project in some cases less complex and come up with some more cost-effective options. So looking at the project now in 6 separate phases, Himanshu mentioned the frontage improvements that were talked about as being something people wanted to see right up front. So that's shown here in phase 1. And then the next part of this phase is also the clearing for the pavilions and some of the elements you're going to see in just a second here in phase 2. Which consists of the farmer's market, the open air pavilion in the center of the available land here. It adds the pavilion parking. At this point, we were considering that to be paved, with the assumption that as each of the phases are added, things like parking lot, stormwater retention, infrastructure for facilities, et cetera, will be augmented or added to. So we tried to think in advance about how each of these phases would most efficiently and most cost effectively get added as each one was layered into the project. This also includes a stormwater swale to assist with stormwater runoff from the new parking lot. It adds some replanting of an eastern and central green area to act as a buffer to the road and bridge compound immediately to the east, and there's some central landscaping kind of down the center of the farmers market and open air pavilion area. So the next element we would be adding would be the agricultural community gardens. These are raised, basically boxes that are raised off the ground that would allow for the growth of vegetables and fruits. They wouldn't be placed in the land surface of the former landfill. Obviously, we want to do this as safely as possible, and this would also add some asphalt parking and sidewalk access that you see added in as part of this phase. Phase 4 includes the community arts building. One of the things we did to reduce costs was to scale that back a little bit. I think originally we had a 10,000 square foot building. This basically reduces it to about 5,000 square feet, but still provides an opportunity for the community to have some sort of arts related showcasing or workshops or some of the specific things that Stephanie was talking about. And then Phase 5 adds in the amphitheater, the expanded parking along the northern portion of the property to accommodate the amphitheater, and the addition of the stormwater retention along the western property boundary. Obviously, this was the single biggest cost item, both as part of this plan and the initial plan. So we kind of drastically reduced the scope and complexity of what we thought the amphitheater would look like, while still proposing something that would be extremely useful to the community and something that everybody would still enjoy. The original design, and I'll get into the costs here shortly, but the original design contemplated a version similar to what was built in West Boca Raton. It's called the Sunset Cove Amphitheater. Their cost a few years ago were in the $2.7 to $3 million range. We looked at kind of another template that Himanshu personally attended. It's in Lexington, Kentucky. It's obviously a scaled back amphitheater that wouldn't necessarily showcase some of the, a much larger set of concerts, but we weren't necessarily thinking that that's what we'd be driving for here. This is still would be an excellent facility and a much more cost-effective $750,000. You know, I'll point out that these are all conceptual costs based on the opinions of the group, the opinions of the public, and certainly what we've heard from the board at this point. But there's obviously room to adjust these as we would progress into the project. So the last phase basically allows for the clearing of the remaining available land that we felt would be most viable to accommodate future uses. Stephanie talked about the solar component. We've had some preliminary discussions with FP&L that I think we may have reported on last time. And then there's another parcel here off to the west that would have better access to the parking in the more toward the northern portion where something else could potentially be built in the future if another item was identified for that purpose. So when we put all 6 phases together, this is essentially what it looks like. From a layout, it's not too dissimilar from the previous version that we looked at. We did reverse the position of the pavilions and the amphitheater, thinking that the pavilions would be better served a little further to the eastern portion of the property, a little further from the convenience center. But we feel like that with the buffering that would be the trees and foliage and whatnot that would be installed and built in along the edges of these items, that would be adequate so the public could enjoy these things. And the costs presented here are roughly about half of what we saw before. We took a hard look at the costs for the second item, and I guess another future consideration would be how could we further divide that $2 to $2.3 million cost there, such that we could begin work on some of these things sooner than later. And some options that we sort of discussed were if we built a few of the pavilions, and maybe we're less concerned about asphalt parking, or if we did gravel parking. There is opportunity, we think, to maybe subdivide the second phase a little bit more. What we presented here was kind of the first pass, what we thought would clearly bring some value to the community. And obviously, we made a strong effort to reduce the cost estimate from what we had previously put forth. I mentioned the reduction in the amphitheater cost. Yeah, and the rest of these are just kind of attached.
And did we update some clearing costs at the last?
Yeah, I guess we should point that out. We had some recent discussions on the clearing costs, where these costs are slightly different than what was presented in the agenda, since there's obviously a fair amount of land clearing that takes place here. We were probably very conservative with about $400 per acre. We bumped that up to to about 6,000 per acre, recognizing that this is a heavily wooded area and there'd be a fair amount of trees that would need to be disposed of and that sort of thing. So in full disclosure, these costs are a little different, slightly higher than what was presented in the agenda cost.
David, if y'all presented, I don't recall it, but what did FP&L say about the solar farm? Is that doable, or they just say, no, it's a no-go, or?
They have a couple different ranges of projects. There's sort of like a mid-level range based on the size and the acreage available, and they felt like that was the one we most closely qualified for. They would have combined the areas that you see here along with some of the available property to the south that the city of Vero Beach owns, directly adjacent to the airport. And they were looking at another parcel that they could combine collectively to build the infrastructure. They felt like we were close, but I think the takeaway was that the project obviously isn't shovel ready, so they were kind of moving on to other opportunities. But I think we would clearly have the opportunity to bring the discussion forward again once we got further into the project.
Okay.
We felt like we opened the door, right, and set
Yeah.
the stage for those discussions.
I'm sorry, what?
We felt like we opened the door and kind of set the stage for any future discussions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if on those, if it's unless you get to the utility scale solar size, it doesn't really save the user any money. If you're community-based solar projects, they're offsetting, but it's not saving any money, but maybe it's better for the environment. But, if you combine, if you need about 350 acres to get a 74.5, and I don't know what all the airport has. I know they looked at something last year and then decided not to go forward with it because their biggest user is at night with the runway lights, and the storage for solar is still quite expensive to provide.
So the last thing we wanted to briefly talk about was pardon the pun, the low-hanging fruit for grant funding that would be available to contribute to the project. And the farmers market and the community gardens seem to be the two elements of the project that would have I won't say readily available funding, but readily available opportunities. The two that are listed here is a healthy food finance initiative, which comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture jointly with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The point of this type of grant is to better serve areas that have an absence of healthy food and fresh fruits and vegetables available to the public. They specifically mention farmers markets as one of the elements that they like to see as part of their project, so we like that component to it. And then the local foods, local places is also a U.S. Department of Agriculture based initiative. Again, improving access to healthy foods, and they specifically noted farmers markets as well as community gardens as being elements of projects that they like to see. We mentioned a lot with respect to fine arts in terms of the Community Arts Center and the amphitheater, so we really looked hard at some opportunities under the National Endowment for the Arts. Unfortunately, they don't have any grants available at the moment that cover construction-related costs. As we got those programs a little further down the road, there'd be funding to contribute to activities that took place. But we're still looking from a construction standpoint at other agencies that might help with that.
Okay.
So, Commissioners, in conclusion, we wanted to get your input on this conceptual citizens plan. It does satisfy Action 13.6 of the 2014 Gifford Neighborhood Plan, which said that we would look at this Gifford landfill site and come up with some plans for redevelopment. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there is no set timeline. There is no available funding here. So the second part is to sort of direct staff to seek out grants and other funding sources, including public and private partnerships, and to return at some future time to see how this redevelopment concept could actually be moved forward.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Zork?
I know the targeted users of these community enhancements would be the Gifford-based community. And we're trying to make use of a piece of property that has some old issues to it that it's gotten to a point where we can look at doing something with it. But if you really wanted to have something that benefited the community, the closer to the community you are, where you don't have to have 200 parking spaces in the front, if there was a spot, taking one step back, if we were looking at doing a community-based project to benefit the residents of Gifford, I would look to it towards another site, one that's next to the Samaritan Center. There's about a 25-acre site that puts you north of 41st Street, west of the railroad tracks, east of 43rd. It makes it completely pedestrian friendly for people within the Gifford community walk to it. But I know we don't own that piece. We own this piece that has the baggage that comes along with it, that we then have to take everybody from the Gifford community and transport them there somehow, and things get used more frequently the easier they are to use. So I know we're trying to make the best of a piece of property that we have, but in the big picture, investing $10–15 million, I'd rather pay $1 million for a site in the right location that's within the community, that's within walking distance. You don't have to have as much parking. You don't have to it doesn't have the history, legacy that we will always have to deal with in some fashion. I think it's a great use of what we have to work with. But to me, to make something to benefit the community, the more it's within the community, the more likely and the frequency of use. At least that's my personal feeling. I think you did a great job working through what we have on the site we have. If we were starting from a clean slate, I'd probably look towards a different site that would maybe enhance more likelihood and frequency of use and visits to a site. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zork. Commissioner Fleischer?
Again, we have to remind ourselves why we're here. We weren't here because we're looking to build a project. We're here to return back land, the people's land, back to the people with the best possible choices that's supported by the community and that will have a very strong benefit for the public. We weren't looking to create another project somewhere else and invest in other lands. We're looking to take that and now make it a nice place for the people to be proud of, for the citizens to be able to utilize, and for the county to have something other than a former wasteland.
And that's the catch. It will always be labeled as a former wasteland, and that stigma will never go away. I think you can alter it. I've seen, golf courses on landfills. I've seen other uses on landfills, but when you're looking at, even though they're elevated vegetable gardens, to change the perception of where it's at, again, starting from a clean slate, if we were to say we're going to embark on a Gifford community project site, I would pick somewhere else. We don't have somewhere else, so I recognize that. We have what we have. So somebody's going to be investing $10 million into this site, whether it's grants, it's us, it's the state, it's somebody. That's still $10 million. And again, with anything, the closer it is to the user, the more frequency of the user. If you could tell your kids, hey, why don't you go 2 blocks over and go to the community garden and see if we've got something we can use for dinner, versus saying, hey, can you get your older brother to take the car to drive down there and go down the street, which is going to happen more frequently. That's all I'm bringing up.
Commissioner Flory?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. From the start, from the very early start, I was for basically doing something which would make this land usable for the citizens of Indian River County, but it was more a passive use of the land, something that could be done for about $1 million or $2 million. I never expected that it would morph into something like this. I believe, quite simply, that this is fully financially not feasible for Indian River County, and that would include with the state and the federal government when you look forward in the next 5 to 10 years. Looking at some of the specifics, coming from agriculture, I mean, this is $70,000 an acre for 3 acres of agricultural land, which is clearly by far the most expensive agricultural land in the county, if not the state of Florida. There may be some smaller pieces in the state of Florida, but in the county, it is the most expensive piece of agricultural land, and it's built on a dump, which is why it's more expensive, because you have to build raised gardens. So only with taxpayer money would somebody consider something like this, and then you leave the legacy that it has, which Commissioner Zork has mentioned, that it is from a dump. So I find that to be almost offensive to the citizens of Gifford for that one, but obviously there's some people who feel different. So I can go on. I mean, some of the things like the auditorium, I've said before, we have a great facility at the fairgrounds. That's where something like this belongs, because then it's suitable for the whole facility. So I could go on, but I won't. So, I mean, I'm fully supportive of Phase 1 today, but that will be it from my perspective, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Sure, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to everybody that's been involved in this process. I think this is the first step in Brownfield's redevelopment, and I commend everybody, the community, the staff, and everybody that's worked to put this plan together. I know it took a long time and a lot of effort. Brownfield redevelopments have been very successful statewide and nationwide. There's many different examples of what can be done on old landfills. There's many different options that have been successful. I think we all get those publications with the best practices and those success stories. That being said, you know, there are some things that may or may not be appropriate for a community, but depending on what the community wants, you craft a design and a project based on that. I think that for this particular location, there's a lot of excitement within the community for what could happen, and there's lots of discussions, and you know, maybe some of those discussions are more on the daydreaming side, but I think a lot of those discussions are very much based in reality and based on possible partnerships that could be worked out within the community with groups and organizations that are already doing things in the community, and with you know, those things that, and then groups that are doing things from outside the community. I mean, talking about the possibility of an art center, I could see, you know, either the Vero Beach Museum or the Cultural Council or something like that coming in and partnering to do something there. I mean, I think many different things can be done and conversations can be had to take down some of this list and some of these initiatives that the community has identified that would not necessarily put them on our budget. I don't think anybody today is really asking us to put anything on the 5-year CIP. That's not what I'm getting. I'm getting that we're kind of looking for, this is what we've come up with based on community input. We kind of just need some direction about putting something firmer together, maybe having some more conversations. And I would remind everybody that this is a design, which is really a roadmap and some parameters of how to move forward. But as anybody that goes on a long winding trip knows, sometimes the road that gets you there is a different road than what you mapped out to begin with. And I kind of see this as our initial mapping of that road trip, and how we get to the end destination might not be exactly what's on this page today, but will hold up to those tenets and concepts that the community has brought forward.
Thank you. And just a couple things from my point of view is, one, you know, we've talked about the fact it's a landfill and the community gardens and stuff, but St. Lucie County has a public golf course, Fairwinds, down off US 1. That's a former landfill. And I've golfed there before. And if you didn't know the history, you'd never realize it was a former landfill. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was an idea that came from the community during the public discussion, right? That the Gifford community said, hey, we would like a place for a community garden. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
I agree a lot with what Commissioner Adams said. I think if we have a blueprint here, you know, it's not set in stone. But I think it opens up philanthropic opportunities for the Gifford community, where if they have, if we kind of conceptually approve this plan, and it won't just be taxpayer dollars, it would be private donations, and they could go out and solicit those private donations and say, hey, we want to build this community and garden in an open market area. This county is just so exceptional on philanthropic giving that I think it could very easily be done through contributions such as that. Once we heard this about the 16th Street ball fields, that, well, nobody wants to invest money because we don't know the future. We don't want to put money into something where we don't know what's going to happen. And then once we surplus those fields, the Graves Foundation stepped up, and they had a plan, they had money, and if you all have noticed, they're working on those fields as we speak. And I see the same thing here, that if we give a plan out there and say, yeah, we're committed to this, that then they can go out and solicit those funds, and the community will support a lot of this. I will say that I would still like to see the amphitheater way, way, way downsized. Okay, it's not my vision that this would be something where we would be attracting big name acts to come, draw 8,000-10,000 people. I see it as a place where the Gifford Youth Orchestra could go do a concert outside for the community. It's almost as simple as, we have these portable stages now that are covered, and I'm thinking just something a little bit nicer than that. It doesn't have to be this huge amphitheater kind of thing. I think just something where they could have, Saturday concerts in the park kind of thing, local bands, the Gifford Youth Orchestra, things like that, but not to the level that we need to bring in a Kenny Chesney act like Coral Wind Amphitheater down in Palm Beach. So I would like to see that way, way, way scaled down even further, and something just very simple, shelter over it, a stage, power to it, and things like that. But I can see that being really scaled down. But the bottom line is I like the overall conceptual plan. I think Commissioner Adams was correct that it may evolve over time, but I think it's important that we give the community at least a blueprint to start with, and that they can then start working on funding. So, I think it's good to go forward with this, and I certainly agree with the comments that Commissioner Solari made, that it is a big price tag, but I think again that with this philanthropic community we have here, that a lot of that could be done through private donations. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that. Before I open up to the public, commissioners, any other final comments?
Mr. Chair.
Jason.
Yeah, just like to go over a couple things. Yes, I'm thinking of this as a conceptual plan. Things could change. There's a potential for community partnerships, P3s, and so we have this phased, but things may happen completely different than what the phases are. It may be opportunity driven. If some group comes forward that wants to do something that's phase 6, then maybe that's what we do. And if you look at the fairground master plan from 20 years ago, you'll see that the fairgrounds doesn't look like that master plan. It had some things that have been done. There's some things that have changed from there. I am concerned about the stigma of not just the former dump, but if you look at this parcel right now, there's 2 constraints on it. One is the Gifford Customer Convenience Center, still there, kind of right in the middle of the parcel. And then the road and bridge compound that's on the east end. I just want everyone to be realistic in expectations of the fact that we still have some fairly industrial, heavy-duty kind of uses that are happening there that could be limiting to what we do with the site. I think anything that we do as far as other opportunities going forward, we need to go through the process and involve the community in anything. Just a couple of a business item. that I'd like to get out of the way. That I think the open field cost estimates were low. When the last time we built an open field, Joe Wiggins Field, it was significantly more than that. And these are fairly heavily wooded fields also, and I think the site conditions can be different and raise those costs, and I think our site conditions would be more challenging than average here. And then just the cost to operate anything that's put in there. As you know, there's probably an additional homestead exemption coming next year, which is a $3.6 million ongoing impact to the county. So taking on additional facilities, if the county has an operating responsibility, that's going to be a challenge. So I think we want to make sure that we're not, that expectations aren't that we're going to have something there sooner rather than later. So I think there are a lot of financial constraints, not just to the upfront capital, but the ongoing operating costs as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any final, Commissioner Zork?
Yep, one more. And in looking at the sketch of where Phase 1 would be, we have to remember what charitable organization used to be there, which was probably one of the most well-funded, well-represented, long list of significant contributors. There's many in the, I don't want to say the million plus, but there's a few, and many in the hundreds of thousands used to occupy that site, and because of the legacy history, moved elsewhere, that we had to help find them a place to go to. So I'm with Commissioner Solari, Phase 1, but it's hard to put that much money into a site that has so much not so positive history.
But how are you going, I'm sorry, how are you going to change its history and its positivity if you don't invest in it? I mean, if you just let it sit there, it's only going to continue to be what it is in our minds now. But for, like, my son, it will be something completely different because he has no history of knowing it as a landfill, just to counterpoint.
No,
Nobody's saying that you don't have a plan. We had a plan initially before it got overblown, and it allows for something to be done a lot quicker and used. But I believe it recognized the more passive uses, recognized the existing problems with the property. Because every time, as I understand it, every time you pave over more land, and especially every time you add more buildings, then you've got the methane and other gas problems, which you then have to specifically address. So everything that's not a really passive activity becomes extra expensive on this piece of land. Again, the best example is the 3 acres of agricultural land at $70,000 per acre. I mean, that's an incredible price to pay to take 3 acres of this land and make it usable for a community garden. Is in just my opinion. You can get a lot of other places that would be a lot cheaper. And another big problem is that this initially, there was talk of this being a county park, and for the whole county. Now it's become more and more Gifford specific. And so for me, I mean, there's a bigger problem in here, and it's that too many things are done to keep everybody in Gifford, and not bring other people from outside Gifford into Gifford, and not take people in Gifford outside. This is why the amphitheater, I believe, belongs in the fairgrounds, where there are facilities for the fairgrounds, and that everybody in the county would come and would end some of this geographical segregation, which I believe is very strong in this county. That's what I'd like to see go. And I believe the initial plan for this piece of property would have invited in more young people, because it would have had those easy pickup grounds that we did for the Joe Wiggins Field, and that would be a place that kids would just go more naturally after school and stuff, hopefully. But
that original plan was just all open fields?
Mostly open fields. There's some with some ball fields, ball fields and stuff like that, but there are no hard facilities. And you could add all pervious service, so you didn't have to put all the acres of asphalt down there. The cost of the bathroom in a facility like this is going to be incredible compared to a cost of a bathroom where there's already sewer and water right there. So it's just, everything about it just increases the price, and in my view, does things to the community which I don't think is necessarily the right direction.
Okay. Any final comments from the commissioners? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the conceptual plan? Good afternoon. Welcome.
Clock first. Yeah. Still morning, I guess. Good morning. Oh, no, 12:08.
You're the first afternoon
12:08.
speaker.
Okay, good afternoon. Joe Adelet, 4570 57th Avenue, in the county. This is a tough issue, and I agree with everyone, including Commissioner Solari. If I'm not mistaken, though, Wabasso had a landfill, which is now the fairground. So I guess, and none of us call it Wabasso landfill, we call it the fairground. So I guess over time, people do forget or they just don't use that term anymore. I don't know what the answer is, just like if everyone else doesn't. It's a tough issue, and we all know the bottom line is money. So all we are hoping that eventually, like Mr. Mader said, there's no funding, no timeline. For me, I understand that, so I don't look for anything to occur anytime soon. I have no hopes for this because I know the bottom line is money. So whatever happens, when it happens, we're hoping that whatever it is just something that people can come to enjoy. And the Gifford landfill is located in Gifford, but I think ultimately whatever does happen with this property, it's not a Gifford function. It's a county place for everybody to come to. So whatever occurs there, it's not going to be just for the people of Gifford. It's going to be for the people of Indian River County. But it's a tough issue, and I'm in support of whatever happens there. I'd like to thank Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Mr. Mader, and everyone, including the commissioner, for the efforts that are being made. It's a tough issue, and I hope somewhere down the line we can come to some type of answer.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. Wilford Hart again, 617 19th Place Southwest, Vero Beach, Florida. Mr. Zort, you're good. You know I love you, but I got to tell you this. Have you ever heard of Bethune-Cookman University?
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of Mary McLeod Bethune?
No.
Okay.
Well, I
She's
mean,
the founder of the college that I graduated from. And Bethune-Cookman was founded on top of a dump. But when I got there were buildings. And there was a sign that stated, "Enter to learn, depart to serve." And that's what we were taught. See, I don't have a stigma about my university that I graduated from, because I never saw a dump. Now, growing up, that same landfill that we're talking about today, my father used to take us out there as kids because he used to monitor that because there was so much pollution that was flowing through that area there. And he monitored that. A man with a sixth-grade education monitored all that because he was concerned about the people. These folks here have been working really hard. And now we get to a point to where we think that we need to go somewhere else over there by those folks over there on South Gifford Road. At one time, it was said, well, why not name that after Victor Hart? Make it out of part, named after my father. That came up. So we were excited about naming that after my father. But we said, his children said no, because his hand was actually in that 40 acres that you guys were kind enough to name it after my father. I'm all about, I'm a music buff. I love excitement. I love to sing. I love to just bring people in and have a great time. And yes, there should be a timetable on what you're going to do. And there's going to be a timetable, because that's their job. That's his job. I love him too. But guess what? This is business to me. And you guys have taken your time out to do all this work, and it's not going to be in vain. So I'm going to ask this board today, Mr. Lyer, Mr. Fletcher, Ms. Adams, Mr. Zork, y'all come up with a plan to where this can be successful, and this is not for gift. You know how many black folks live down that road, in that area? You can count them on almost one hand. Come on now, let's get this thing right. It's not about Gifford. But I'm going to tell you this, there are so many talented people in our community, and I see talent right here that have moved here and grew up here, and we have so much talent in our community that we ought to not stagnate. Our Hispanics, our whites, our blacks, our Asians. And this could be a place where we can be really, really proud to say that this belongs to Indian River County. So I'm going to ask this board today to get out of their mind. The stigma is a dump. It's land. On the ocean there, one time you couldn't get white folks to live on the beach because they didn't want to get bit by mosquitoes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's tell it like we're going to tell it, Doc. Don't sugarcoat nothing up here today. We're going to tell it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build that foundation. You talked about that gas. We're going to take care of that gas. We're going to do everything that we need to do, and then we're going to find some money. And we're going to build this thing. And then I want y'all to pat yourself on the head and say, well done. And Mr. Zark, I call you the preacher. Now, I'm going to ask you to make the right decisions when you start making these decisions based upon what you're actually supposed to be doing. God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Is there anyone else from the public wishes to comment? Okay, so Commissioner Fletcher.
You know, and once again, I do believe that we are going to go forward. It just got tremendously expensive. It did. This thing grew. It's everyone's collective obligation and the liability that we all presented. Everyone. We rode the storm. We went to the meetings. We participated. Everybody went out into breakout groups. And then when that information got gathered, it did develop from an enhanced sandlot with maybe some accoutrements and space to grow to a higher level of expectation from the community, a higher level of expectation from us, also a financial liability and obligation. So with that, I mean, when we started hearing numbers, I said, wait a minute, this is not what we envisioned. And we even heard from the community, that's not what we thought was going to have to take place. We just want this place to be nice for now. So I believe that's the best course of action today, and I, for one, do not believe that the stigma of the landfill is there for a very long period of time. And I believe, like what Commissioner Adams said about her son will not be able to live that legacy of the landfill or you being traipsed there by Daddy to take a look at it in the smelly little pond area with the debris, and none of that's going to be there. And I think that we've done a lot for recovery. It's still being monitored, and I believe that it will be somewhere. But to move forward right now might be a little irresponsible. But I agree it's going to happen, and you're going to see it. You're going to see it. We won't have to wait for the kids to grow up to see it. But for now, I think phase one is the most appropriate action, so it has a reasonable appearance. And when people are passing by, we'll begin the process of the elimination of, that's the landfill. It'll be a little greener, a little nicer, and then we'll begin with other opportunities to make it even better for all county residents, not just one pocket that, and you said, yourself clearly that it would be for everyone. This is Indian River County. It's not just one isolated little spot. Thank you.
So, Commissioners, I'd like to take this in two steps, if you all don't mind. One is we do have a recommendation from staff to provide input, which I think we've done, and then approve the conceptual draft redevelopment plan for the landfill, and then also to direct staff to seek out grants and other funding sources and to come back with an update on that. So at this time, is there a motion for staff recommendation?
Staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Flesher for staff recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion, Commissioner Zork?
Yes, these numbers that were developed on cost-wise were developed by whom?
Geosyntec.
Okay. If, in looking at the reality of this and the cost of this, I think having a conversation with our public works side to look at, how did you come up with your numbers? Is it 8 to 10? Is it 12 to 15? Is it 20? What is the real number? Because we found in bidding projects, the West Wabasso sewer, $1 million more than budgeted on a $2 million budget. You can't, so if you're going to put something in motion, it's got to be on as close to real numbers. When we did Joe Wiggins Field, how much, that was $1 million field, right? Roughly?
It was several hundred thousand. I think it's about 400,000 for the.
And that's just for a sodded lot that doesn't have any legacy history that you have to make any accommodations for. So we have some maybe more localized cost data just to true up the numbers so that you don't want to go out for a grant and say it's going to cost you $2 million, and then you get the grant for $2 million, you find it cost you $4 million, and then who's going to pick up the other $2 million? As we've worked through West Wabasso and some other items, just try to have the best cost estimates. And I know everything's subject to change, but if you start with a low number, then you're just at a deficit when you're going out trying to get money for something. You're not trying to get the right amount of money.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Flesher to approve staff recommendation. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Slurry opposed. And then, Commissioners, I've heard several of you mention that the Phase 1 would be appropriate. That would be the frontage improvements and the open field.
Mr. Chairman, if it's just Phase 1, I'd be happy to make a motion to direct staff to come back with a firmer proposal for the work involved in Phase 1.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Flesher, to direct staff to come back with a more final plan and cost estimate for Phase 1. Okay. Commissioners, any discussion on the motion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us?
Actually, I have a question.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Adams.
Sorry.
Yep, no worries.
Did we not already approve some type of landscape improvements? Was that to the public works section, or am I confused?
I think there was cleaning up the gate
Just
and
cleaning
the
it up.
fence
Okay.
up front. Yeah, I think this is a little bit more some beautification, landscaping, and things
This
like
is
that.
gonna have like the specimen trees and all that fun stuff?
I believe, well, that'll come back to us in the more
Okay.
complete plan, I think, but, okay. All right, so no comment from the public. So motion by Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Flesher, to direct staff to come back with a more complete and accurate plan and cost for Phase 1. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for sitting through all the rest of the meeting, and you guys were last on the agenda. Sorry about that, but thank you for all your time and work, and we look forward to you all coming back and as we move this forward. But again, thank you all for your work and effort on getting this far, and we look forward to keeping it going. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that concludes our agenda. Is there anything for the public good? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.